Good evening. It being Tuesday, May 8th, I'd like to call the meeting to order. May I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Dennehy cannot join us this evening. He is held up in court. So we'll just be the four of us this evening. Are there any walk-ins? There being none, we'll go to the report of the town administrator. Jim?
Sure, very quickly, a couple things. Ship Shape Day turned out to be an enormous success. According to the DPW, they processed more than 20 tons of material.
Wow.
Normally, we are in the 5 to 6 ton range. We think most of it is from, obviously, the winter storms, but that's a tremendous amount of debris and trash that people remove, so that's phenomenal. Harbor flushing, hydrant flushing, we're flushing the harbor area tonight. We did it around 3 o'clock in the morning, they start, and they'll continue that around town, so we are still being very aggressive when flushing the hydrants to try to help with that brown water problem. And finally, people have seen the paving we're doing. That paving was all in conjunction with the water projects we're done. That is just about wrapped up. The next major paving that people will see will be the Jericho Road Hadley area, and will come from First Parish down to Hadley, and then up to Turner at the lights. It'll start with the sidewalks, will all get rebuilt and finished, milling and paving, and then the intersection of Hadley and Jericho is going to be made more pedestrian friendly. And what they're going to do is, how that corner kind of at Scituate Meadow is very round, they're going to square that off so people can't cut that corner and go up Hadley at a high rate of speed. So that's where we are on that, and right now they're just doing some surveying. But that'll be the next big thing that people see paving, hopefully in the very near future.
Will that be all we're gonna do for the Chapter 90 money?
He's doing a lot of small projects, so we have some streets with really bad areas that we're going up on. We're just doing an overlay or grinding out and fixing them, so there's a couple spots on Oceanside that'll get some work that are in really bad shape. Those will be the last big project with the Chapter 90, and that'll be a lot of the small things, potholes, and again, big sections that he's just going to either overlay or grind and overlay in really bad areas.
At that intersection, Jim, is that the sidewalk's going to go down to Turner? How much?
Yes, there's a sidewalk there now,
Yeah, it's
and
gonna
so
be-
they'll fix it all the way. Yep.
And then island in there, or just kind of square it off?
I talked to Kevin about the island, and the last time he came to the board about the island, the board said no. So it will square it off. They'll have a painted island on there, but they won't actually put a physical island in. So you'll come down Hadley. Again, instead of that sweeping right-hand turn, it'll come down almost straight and extend actually a little further out into Jericho to make that a real stop and turn. And coming from Jericho, you won't be able to just cut that corner and go racing up Hadley. So it should make a difference.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, okay. All right, moving right along. Don Knapp, we're going to discuss some Memorial Day events. How are you, Don?
Good evening.
Welcome. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, thanks.
I don't tell them no, but it's nice to let the public know as well.
Right. Again, so it's the that time of year for the annual Scituate Memorial Day Parade and Ceremony. It'll be May 28th, Monday, May 28th. Right now, we're just finalizing the program. We have a few more things to plug in, so we'll have the program out by the week of the 21st, it looks like. So a week ahead of time. But right now we have the Boy Scout Troop 7 will be assisting me once again this year, flagging all the town's veterans' graves. We'll cover Cudworth, Union, St. Mary, Old and New, Fairview, Groveland, Mount Hope, Driftway, Greenbush, Merritt. Mr. Fran Lyden, the DPW, will be placing flags and wreaths on the town memorials and just doing the final prep work on Lawson Common and Cudworth. They do an outstanding job as usual, and again, with the Boy Scouts, it just makes that go real fast. It's amazing what they do for me. So getting on to the ceremony will begin the first at 8 a.m. with the flotilla underway, leaving the Harbor Master's office, the throwing of the wreath to honor those lost at sea, and I believe you're going to participate in that, is my understanding, or?
I'd like to go, so yeah,
Yeah.
I'll be there.
All right, and I think they have a couple floaties for Sean if he wants to go. But, at
Extra large, I would imagine.
Senior Selectman Harris?
So what will happen after that is everyone participating in the parade usually form up right here in the front of the town hall between 10 and 10:30. We try and step off 10:30 sharp and proceed down First Parish Road up to Lawson Common, and then try and get everybody in there and settled in, and try and begin it around 11:15. And then, of course, in case of clement weather, which we're not going to have, it's going to be beautiful. It's to be announced, so in prior years, we had it at Gar Hall. I'm looking in to see if I can move it over to the high school, so everyone can fit in. So I have to go over and meet with them and before I post anything official. And then, of course, there'll be handicap parking. We always try and have handicap parking on the east end of the common. And then also a handicap porta potty on the grounds. And then if anyone needs any kind of assistance, we always ask them to ask any patrol officer that's along the route. They can help out and assist. And then we'll have the Project 351 students going to be there again this year too, presenting for the for Governor Baker. So, and basically that's where we're at right now. If anyone has any questions or concerns, they can give me a call in my office, 781-545-8715, and I'll be glad to assist.
Well, thank you for planning all that. It's a great day for the town. Kick spring, really, spring comes late here. So look forward to it. Does anybody have any questions for John?
Nope.
Great. Thanks for coming in and letting the public know.
All right, thank you.
So much. Have a great night.
See you.
And order those floats for Sean. Next, being 7, it's a little early, we're running ahead of schedule. 9, Brad, hope it's good. Director of Planning and Development to discuss the municipal vulnerability plan, which I have a really hard time saying.
Yes, it's a mouthful for sure.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So I actually wanted to talk to you folks about 2 potential grant opportunities that we're going to be applying for, and just seeking a letter of support from you on that. So the first is related to the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan, and this is the MVP plan that Nancy Durfee helped shepherd through the state approval process. Again, this is our Climate Vulnerability Assessment and Action Plan. To kind of boil it down, there's a lot of good stuff in here, but the kind of follow-up actions for the town, there's climate actions, and there's 3. One is addressing the vulnerability of our coastal business districts, which we'll actually get to the next grant I'll talk to you about in a minute. The second is address the vulnerability of our municipal infrastructure, and the third is a public outreach campaign. So we're submitting so we are one of the few towns that actually have an MVP designation now, and there's what's called a MVP action grant available right now, and those grants are available to implement some of the items in a town's MVP plan. So we are actually putting together a grant application to prepare, I guess what you'd call an action plan or something more concrete on our municipal wastewater system. So not just the plant, but the sewer pump stations, the pipes in the ground, really to take this kind of broad recommendations to the next level, kind of do an assessment of our wastewater system and get recommendations so that we can, in a future round, get specific, design and engineering for how we might upgrade or modify those facilities to make them, resilient into the future, particularly against, flooding and sea level rise. So really, this is kind of we've done the first step. This would be the second step in addressing some of the recommendations from this plan. So we'll be seeking a grant. We're still working on the scope now, but it'll be, probably a few $100,000 to address that.
So this plan more addresses our infrastructure needs.
It does,
Okay.
yes. So it's protecting the wastewater system into the future, given that, a lot of these facilities are located in vulnerable locations.
Who's the grant from?
It's the EEA, Energy and Environmental Affairs,
Federal?
state.
Can we get a copy of that, Brad, if you have it electronically?
The application or the plan?
That.
Yeah, the plan is online, and I can send you a link.
All right,
It's on our
online.
website.
It's on your website?
Yeah, I'll send Lorraine a link, and she can send it
I'm
around.
seeing it, so I don't, maybe you did.
It just got approved like a month ago,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah, all right, I'll grab it on your website, that's fine.
There is the MAPC was presenting this to Coastal Coalition 40 minutes ago, and she did do a summary, the MAPC, that an executive summary, which would be really useful to get our hands on.
Yes, definitely, we can do that.
She just did that. She just
Who's
reported.
she?
One of the representatives from MAPC
Oh, okay.
who is presenting at Coast.
Yeah, so MAPC for like technical assistance helped the town put together the plan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Brad, could you just explain, would this help upgrade our system down at Sand Hills or not? Egypt Beach doesn't seem to be such a problem. We just spent a lot of money doing work there at that pump station, but Sand Hills is an issue where it goes underwater.
Yeah, so I would envision this project proposal covering all of our wastewater system, if you will. So Sand Hills Pump Station would certainly be part of that. It would talk about the issues that are happening, the current issues, and then how we might address that at kind of a conceptual level, so that in a future grant round, a successive round, we could go and get design and engineering to get the money to actually do a project. Rather than just jumping in and doing something, not fully understanding what the issues are and how best to resolve it, I think it makes sense to try and get some of this, some of this funding to look into that.
Any other questions with regards to that one?
Nope.
Okay. So you just need us to sign the letter of support?
Yes.
You don't really need to take a vote or anything on
No,
this?
yeah, it's just throwing our hat in the ring for another grant, so,
No, thank you, which
Yep.
are usually successful, so
yeah,
keep our fingers crossed for this one.
yes.
Much needed.
And then there's another letter of support. So there's another grant opportunity through Energy Environmental Affairs, the state office again. It's called a Planning Assistance Grant. This grant isn't for as much money, but it's to provide funding to communities to do kind of planning exercises. You can do regulatory, you could do zoning, get the money to do new zoning as well. I think, with the upcoming master plan, that might be kind of premature, so I'd rather focus on getting their assistance to do some planning work. And what I'd like to do is focus on the harbor, and then pick up on one of the other recommendations in this plan to do some planning for some of our vulnerable coastal business districts. So we could focus on the harbor, have stakeholder meetings with business owners, property owners, residents, talk to them about the current issues, kind of what we can do in the short term in terms of making the existing facilities resilient, and then think long-term. Probably have some of those uncomfortable conversations, but I think this would give us that opportunity to at least, start moving in that direction. So again, this is a $50,000 grant that we'd be going after, again, for that planning level assistance. So we'd get funding, hire a consultant, and work to have those kind of participatory meetings. And then, we'd probably come up, again, with some kind of draft recommendations for look at your zoning, do some more kind of stakeholder engagement. So those are the kinds of recommendations that would likely come out of that.
Any questions on that one?
So will it create an action plan, or is it just kind of brainstorming?
Well, right now, we just have a broad, the plan did dig into the 3 climate actions, again, this being one of them, but it just kind of scratched the surface. This process would dig in a lot deeper. We'd have, meetings with those folks down in the harbor. And again, I think depending upon whether it was short-term or long-term, I think some of the short-term items might say, flood-proofing your building, temporary flood barriers, and then the long-term might be look into your zoning, so it might not come up with specific recommendations, but it might. We might get to that as well, so.
So look into your zoning, would that mean not make that a commercial area?
No, if you were to maybe expand the business district, again, if in the case that, flooding exacerbates or sea level rise makes some of the existing harbor unusable in the future, do you want to potentially modify the boundaries of that district to, make sure that we still have a vibrant, harbor into the future?
Interesting.
I think we need that.
Yeah, we need to start the conversation
Yeah,
anyways.
So that's great. Awesome. Did you want to share some good news?
Yes, we just got notification today that we received, and I believe this is the first round of I'm probably going to mess the name up, the Housing Preparedness Grant? Housing Production Grant, sorry, there's so many of these things we're going for. This was from the DHCD, Department of Housing and Community Development, so we got $30,000 today to look into ways to modify our zoning to increase the production of affordable housing, and these are implementing recommendations from the town's affordable housing production plan. So very excited about that.
Excellent, thank you.
Great.
You did that pretty quickly, so thanks,
Yeah.
Brad.
Yeah.
We need that help. All right, any other questions for Brad? No?
It's great
Seeing
progress.
none, We'll sign that letter tonight, so you have that in your hand, so you can submit your application. 2 letters, we have them ready for you. All right?
Okay, great, thank you very much.
Brad,
Appreciate it, thanks.
Thanks so much for all your work.
Thank you.
Next is to discuss and vote the Knights of Columbus special event for their carnival application. Mark, Brady, how are you this evening?
Good.
Welcome
Thank you.
to the annual review of the carnival.
So everybody, if you know, I'm Mark Brady. I'm one of the co-chairmen of the Situate Knights of Columbus Carnival, 54 Kenneth Road. And tonight we are here with our application for our annual carnival for this year. And I'm going to answer any questions you may have about it. I can give you the dates we applied for were the 10th to the 14th, which means if we get that, the carnival would come in on Monday morning early. It would be out of here before Sunday morning early. We're also looking to have fireworks on Friday and Saturday night. We have fiesta shows is the operation that we're going to use this year.
Is that a new?
No, they were here last year also. We've had them in several years before that, too. Then John Flynn is their operating manager. He has assured me that he has filed applications for permits that are needed, as we have too from the Knights of Columbus. Any other questions I can answer for you?
Anything new? I know it seems like you moved it up a week.
No, it's just sometimes the 4th moves around a little bit to the end of the week or the beginning of the week, but we've been, last year was this week too. It was the year before it was later because the operator messed up and scheduled 2 shows in the same week, so we had to move it back, but.
I always appreciate that you do this for my birthday.
That's
I know it's always fun.
Any questions?
That's why they do.
No,
fireworks.
I was there last year. I thought the layout was great. I thought there was a lot of spacing, and the kids had room to get around. I thought the rides were attractive to them for all age groups, so I think you guys did a great job.
Thank you.
And also, just want to reiterate, as we do every year, the Knights takes this money and puts it back into the community. They're probably one of the most charitable groups in town. Whenever there's a family or whenever there's an event going on, the Knights are always stepping up to the table and help people in need, so I appreciate the work you do.
Thank you.
While the chief's here, perfect timing, can we bag the signs? Is that what you wanted to do last year, didn't you? The one-ways and stuff like that? Did we do it last year, Mark?
No, I think you stayed with it.
We're gonna keep behind CVS one way.
And did that work all right for you?
Yeah.
No problem with us.
There's not much choice because where it's been one way, you can turn around and all of a sudden allow two-way traffic. Anybody's used to taking one look to the left coming out of CVS and there's traffic coming the other direction. Yeah, it's a huge liability on the town to start jumping us back and forth just for weekends or something like that. So last year we kept it the same. Everything seemed to function just fine. And that would be what we'd intend to do this year as well.
Right. And how many years? 60.
This is the 65th year.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just cleaning out my parents' house over the last weekend and found a big poster. Picture of my father is the original person, the chairman who started it, and it's a picture of him holding a girl on a pony, giving a pony ride at the first carnival in 1953, yeah, so.
Did you frame it? You better frame it.
It's framed, yeah.
Yeah.
We gave it to him a long time ago. I just happened to find it because it was buried in some stuff, but
Time to put it on the wall.
there you go.
We have everything, it looks like you've submitted everything and there are no objections by any of the departments here, so everything seems to be in line. Chief, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Nothing at all. It's one of the most consistent events we have.
Okay. All right, so I think we need a motion to approve. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
What pages?
Bueller?
Move to approve a special event permit to Mark Brady, the Knights of Columbus Carnival from July 10th, 2018 to July 14th, 2018. A setup on, I said July, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a setup of July 9th and take down July 14th in Cole Parkway.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Harris, second by Ms. Canfield. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, the next item on our agenda to discuss the hawker peddler license application has been postponed. He's going to come forward on 5/29 this evening, and because some other things to get in line, get some abutter feedback as well that we have. So we will move to the liquor license policy. Jim?
So one of the things I talked about during my interviews and when I first started, and the board had asked for, was updating and some new policies. One of the things the town does not have is a liquor policy. basically what's before you has been tried in the last 2 communities I've been in. It works well. It is really just a restatement for the most part of what's in statute, and then it suggests penalties for certain violations. Now, the thing the board needs to remember is this is a policy. It is not binding. It is a guideline for you if someone has a liquor violation. It is for the license holders to know what the expectations are, what the penalties are, potentially, if they have a violation. However, because it is a policy, that means depending upon each individual circumstance, the board can react however they see fit. The one change in this that I worked out with Anne Marie and with Chief Stewart is we did put in a requirement that liquor stores, for their renewal, will have to put in the license reading machines. And Mike, I know you wanted to talk about that a little bit, if you want to come up. But what we would do is we would send this out to all the license holders, and we have some money through Anne Marie's, through fax, where we could help these establishments purchase these and put them in so they wouldn't have to fit the whole, but what are they, Anne Marie, about $5,000 a piece?
It's $4,200 for the initial setup for the technology and the software, and then after that, it's about $600 a year to maintain it. They have it at the Village Market, Sand Hills General Store, and at the Voyage. Currently, those are the 3 license holders in Scituate that have it, and they have the best one, the best product on the market, which I brought some information about it. And the vendor is willing to give a kind of a group rate, a discount, if we get the additional package stores in Scituate to agree to buy it around the same time, so they give us a little bit of a group rate. And also the fax grant has some unobligated funds that we think would be well spent to offset some of that $4,000 startup cost for the businesses. Also ongoing, businesses that have these ID scanners receive a 2 to 5% discount on their own liability insurance. So that's a good thing, yeah.
What we've been finding is that in the last month, we've run across several kids from Scituate and Marshfield high school age kids who have identifications, mass driver's licenses, that we can't tell the difference between our own and what they get fraudulently.
Yeah.
We've taken those around and run them through ID scanners at certain establishments, and there's some ID scanners that are much better than others and have updates from time to time to keep up with the ever-changing technology that's available out there. So I don't want to talk too much about that because it's an ongoing situation that we're looking into. But some of these fake documents, the licenses, get by some of these scanners. So along with this policy, we want to be able to dictate, if you have this ID scanner, and here's an opportunity, here's a grant opportunity for you, then if a license gets by you, then that's, so be it. But if you have a second-rate scanner and you're unwilling to participate in this, and an ID gets by you, and it does get picked up by somebody else, then shame on you. And, I think we got to start, especially with the technology out there for these fraudulent licenses, it's something that has to be done in these establishments. Like I said, 17-year-old kid who doesn't even have a mass driver's license had a perfect version of a Massachusetts driver's license, which he got online.
Yeah. They're all available online, and the technology is so good. There's some very common states that you can buy the replica from. You don't stand in front of a board in a basement anymore. You can order them online, and it's $50 generally, and you get 2. So if one gets confiscated, you get a backup. Yeah, and it doesn't say duplicate, and it's really, technology is really, they come from Asia, generally speaking, and as soon as someone catches, the FBI catches a company, it just pops up somewhere else. So it's really, really very easy for a young person to access a high-quality ID. Last June, when we held the first ever training for package stores owners, we held it at the new Public Safety Complex. FACT sponsored a training, and almost all of our stores were represented there. We had a total of 30 business owners and employees. We opened it up to some of the surrounding communities who participated. I have that list of participants. But it was an awesome experience, and the business owners were really excited to have that opportunity, so we want to make it a regular thing. So it's similar to TIPS training, but it's package store training, and that also, depending on how many employees participate and get a certificate, there's a little exam at the end, they get an additional discount on their insurance. So, but anyway, the business owners and employees that participated loved the opportunity to learn what really their liability is, and to share their experience with one another. Besides the fake ID, the quality fake IDs for underage buyers, Scituate owners report, it's really different around here in the summer. So they get lots of valid but out-of-state IDs, particularly at Sand Hills and probably at the Voyage in Hummerock, from rentals. But those are actually illegal forms of identification in Massachusetts. So the law is it's a Massachusetts ID or a passport. So Pennsylvania or New York, real license, even if you're as old as we are, yeah.
You can't buy liquor in Massachusetts?
Well,
with
it's, if you do sell it, and it turns out that's a fraudulent license,
Yeah.
you stand alone. Massachusetts ABCC will only cover you if you accept a Massachusetts driver's license.
Or a US passport, which was news to almost everybody in the room. So the scanner's a good idea because it protects you from all of it. So the people that have the good quality scanners, namely Sand Hills and the Voyage and Village Market, are really happy to have them. It's a peace of mind type of thing. Yeah, so.
Anne Marie, did you say you held this seminar?
Yeah.
And you had a good response from?
We did have a great response. So I have the list, almost all of our carry-out off-premise sales in Scituate, all but one participated in Scituate. We subsidized it, so it's a $30 per person training. Fax paid $15, and we asked them to pay the other $15 per participant, just to make sure people reserved the date. We provided lunch, and then we also brought in the ID scanner vendor at the end so they could play with it. And the 3 businesses that use it had lots of great things to share with all the other people there that day. So I brought a little summary of it. It was a wonderful training. And yeah, that was the first time I think it's been offered in Scituate, so we should probably, it's not written into the policy, but I think it is a best practice. I think, frankly, once we get, if this new revised policy that Mr. Boudreau has put forward, if we can move forward with that, I think we can continue to, FACTS can support that training on a regular basis, and then probably TIPS training too, because that's not part of our training. The sellers and servers is not part of our local practice, which is a good practice, so it's good timing.
Tony, do you have a question?
No, I think it's great. We've been preaching this for years and years. As you know, when people come in here and get a license, we talk to them about getting everyone TIPS trained,
Right.
and they usually do. And the scanners, as Mike mentioned, people have had good ones and bad ones, so it's necessary to have the strong ones. Do some of the restaurants have the better scanners as well, right? I believe.
The Rivershed had it at one point. To be honest, the only outreach I've done so far has been to the package store owners. Since I'm the under 21 youth prevention, my main concern is, alcohol sources, so the bulk purchases and things like that. So that'll be the next frontier, probably, yeah.
The youth problem in restaurants and bars isn't as significant
It's
in
not.
package stores. No 17 or 18-year-old, 20-year-old kid necessarily wants to go in and sit down and be seen having a cocktail
Yeah.
or beer by, he
With their
can't
parents.
control who else is
Right.
coming in. It's
Right.
easy to slip into a package store and get out
Yeah.
with what you need for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as common.
So-
But I think the Rivershed did have it, and there's always, discounts if you double up and things like that.
I think it's
yeah.
great, and I really appreciate the fact that FACTS
Yeah.
is co-sponsoring and supporting the
not?
vendors to do this. It's,
Happy to do it.
just another great example of the fight against,
All of it.
against this stuff. So I really appreciate your efforts on it,
Our
and I think
pleasure,
it's great.
And if they do it this year, then this will be part of it. The license holder will go through this
Right.
with them, this is what it is, this is why we have it, this is what it means, so they'll be all up to date on what this is. And then if there is a violation, you cite the violation of the state law, you cite the violation of the town's policies,
Yeah.
it gives you a leg.
And that was one of my questions. Are we legally able to write into a policy to require them to have this scanner?
So,
I think so.
That's my only
Question, good question. And I was nervous when you first mentioned it, but then you said you're gonna help pay for it. I mean,
Pay for it.
You're really going beyond.
Ongoing discount,
Really thinking of every way to help, a business in a seasonal community.
yeah, and to be honest, I was surprised by the positive response at that training last June. Everybody wanted it, so it's almost like just helping coordinate it happening. I think they kind of want it, and I don't think that's hopefully not too big of a barrier, if we can subsidize it a little bit.
If somebody follows this, these stores follow this policy, and something gets by them, and something bad happens, when they come before you, they have a they did everything they could.
That's what I think, yeah.
Now, if somebody keeps a second-rate machine, and we catch kids coming out of there,
Right.
and they have these licenses, and we go to another store and we check it, we take that license like we do, and we'll go see how this gets by some of these others.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it doesn't get by all the top-notch ones that we suggest, but yet routinely gets by the one that they insist on keeping,
Mm-hmm.
then the board can turn around and view that in their punishment stage,
Mm-hmm.
okay? They know that their machine can't keep up with technology and
Right.
that they're serving underage kids.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll meet much resistance,
No.
especially where there's financial assistance from FACT in putting these things in place, on top of the insurance benefit.
The $600 that they have to pay annually,
Mm-hmm.
does that, I mean, I know it's new technology, is that designed to update
I think
the
the mo-
software, so as these
Yeah.
things?
I think there's monthly software updates, I think is what the vendor said last year. So they're always, technology's
always
always changing, so they just
Right.
push out the software update, just like your
So you
phone
don't want to
does.
invest in it and then have it
Yeah.
obsolete. maybe.
No,
Yeah.
it's kind of a market leader, and they're based somewhere in Massachusetts. Brought it's, what's it called? Advanced ID Detection is the best one, and that's the one that came to present.
What do they roughly cost?
So the full price, if it weren't discounted, if a business was going to buy it on their own, it is $4,818. I was estimating that there are, 5 to 6 businesses in Scituate that would need them, and they said if we bought at least 5, they would discount it to $4,180. And then we can talk, we'll meet with the chief and Jim and see what piece of we have some unobligated funds from the Scituate Facts grant that need to be spent by the end of September, and how much we want to dedicate toward that and offer that out to the businesses, maybe in a meeting or a letter, whatever you guys think. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, so should this pass tonight, is that something that you will proactively reach out to businesses to tell them of the new policy?
Yeah,
and-
however you want to do it.
Yep.
Yeah. When we offered the training, it was, I just coordinated the effort, and it was all the invitations came from the police department, including the ones to the other towns. We invited through the police department, the police chief. Yeah.
Are licenses on the fiscal year or
Calendar.
calendar year? Okay, so there's time to,
So I'll talk to Anne Marie and the chief. If we're going to do another training in June or July, then we would send this out with a note saying, we're having another training, this will be discussed at the training, please make sure you sign up.
Yeah.
And then as the chief said, these are all, you have a copy of the rules and regulations, you've got the scanner, everybody's tips trained, someone got by you, the person who served them was sent back for remedial training, the board can take all those things into consideration and say, all right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to give you a warning, we're going to suspend your license for 2 days, but we're going to hold that in abeyance in case of any other. So it gives you a wide latitude, but at least you can act on whether or not they're trying or whether they're not trying, which
Yeah.
I think is important, because you'll have liquor staffs come in and say, well, what do you want us to do? We're doing the best we can, and then a guy got by us, and it's not our fault, and then it's, well, you didn't go to the training, you didn't do this, you didn't do that.
Yeah, sometimes.
should we consider the effective date then being on January 1st to give people time to participate in the conversation and maybe get that, or?
No,
Well,
I
it
mean,
says renewal.
we'll
Yeah,
send it
that's
out.
right.
It would be new license or renewals only.
We'll send it
The
out, but they
policy,
don't have to have the scanner until
Yeah.
renewal. And again, this is a policy.
Right.
So if someone came in and said, hey, look, I had
Okay.
a fire, I had this, I had whatever.
Do it, right.
I just didn't have the money, okay, the board can renew his license.
Well, it's good to have a
Or her
guideline,
license.
'cause I think,
Yeah.
Okay.
a lot of times we have folks that come before us, and just for consistency basis, it's nice to have a guideline.
Yeah, and I think one other thing, not to belabor this, but we're really early, we have some people coming in that aren't going to get here. There's really, I think, a fairly stiff penalty for serving underage.
Yeah.
Because the underage are weekends. It's specified in the policy that if you serve underage, it's a weekend suspension. And every service is considered a separate violation. So if you have 3 or 4 kids that they just decide not to card some night and they get caught, each one of those underage persons is a separate violation under your policy.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the penalties for serving underage can be severe if the board wants to impose
Right.
them.
It's more than the cost of a scanner, right? We're losing your revenue for 3 weekends, yeah. So I think it's a
This is-
no-brainer.
This ID reader issue is being very proactive. But after what we've seen in the last month and going back even over the last year, it's 100% necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, the technology that the kids are exposed to, these other places can't keep up to it. So we got to insist on establishments having the technology to keep up with what the kids are coming up with.
So do we want to review what these are? I know everyone's read this, but you want to review the policy, just so folks know what we're looking at here. So the first violation is a letter of reprimand. Am I looking at the right one? There's two.
No,
One
that's,
second, I want to make sure. Is that
the
first
bottom one is the under.
Okay, what's that? So the one for under 21, right?
Yep,
Right.
it's on the bottom.
It's the second one.
Yeah,
There it
it
is.
is section 32. The first violation is suspension of a license up to 6 days on dates to occur on 3 weekend periods. Each 2-day period shall be a Friday and Saturday, continuing through 1 a.m. on the following Sunday. Right. The second violation, suspension of license up to 12 days on 6 weekends in the same manner as outlined in the preceding paragraph. And the third would be a revocation of license. Now, all of that is if it takes place, within, you said 3 years? Is that what I read?
No, that's on the top one. That was one of my questions on.
Okay, you want to ask that question then?
Yeah, I mean, we currently have guidelines that we follow, but even in our guidelines, it doesn't indicate if there's a cutoff period where the kind of slate gets wiped clean.
Right.
And we've reviewed this. Many towns have many different ways of applying their standards to this. So I don't know that we ever came to any sort of conclusion in terms of how we wanted to do that. In the violations above, it says if you're good for 3 years, then it starts over again. And the other thing is sometimes they get sold, so it's a different.
Right, new owner,
Yeah.
right, new license, yeah.
The guidelines that we had were put in place or drawn up by Rick Agnew, actually.
Yeah.
They haven't changed much in the last 10, probably 12 years that I know of. This seems a lot tighter and better written than the previous.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. But I think we need to somehow figure out if we want to put a clause like in the violation above it on
The lower one?
the lower one.
Yeah, because it's not on both, right? I'm just, as.
Oh, the 3 years,
Up
wipe
to
clean.
3 year cycle.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's 3. I've seen some that are 10. I've seen
Yeah.
some that are 5.
Right. I can pull, if you want some, we pulled a bunch of sample municipalities, and Lorraine helped with that, getting other municipalities to share their guidelines. I think that 3 was pretty standard, for 3 years, but we can give you some towns and, cities and towns and examples if you want.
Karen, did you have a thought? A comment? I know you had a thought, sorry.
Any thoughts?
What choice of words?
When it applies to underage selling, I think that the standard needs to be tougher than, yes, things can get by, but the penalty should be, that's what we're trying to prevent. more
That's
than
how it's written in here.
They are
It is.
much.
It is, that was
It's
the
a lot
3-0.
tougher, yeah. They're written separately, I think, for that reason.
Yeah.
Plus, there are criminal charges.
Right, but
yeah.
what's the time on both sections?
Right, let's see.
The first one, it's 3 years, and the second one, there isn't a time, but generally, beyond 3 years, you're gonna have a hard time at ABCC saying, hey, there's a pattern of abuse here, that's a long time, 3 years.
Well, we just penalized somebody that was, 6 or 7 years over a series of violations.
Right, but
But if
this
we
is if
leave-
there's no violation, you have one, and then 3 years go by, you have none,
You start over again.
you basically start over again, but if you have continuous violations within that period, they each count.
But if we're silent, that actually gives us more flexibility of of deciding whether or not it's a pattern locally.
You have, regardless of the policy, you have that anyways.
Because they all say up to. So you can do 0 to
Okay,
6,
okay.
0 to 12. Although there's no flexibility on the, well, I guess there is just because it's a policy, but on number 3, it says your license gets revoked.
Yeah.
it probably should say up to revoked. Because if people are using, if technology gets ahead of, if the criminal's technology gets ahead of the, the establishment's technology, unfortunately, something's going to happen.
Right.
And if people are making their best effort to try and, we're not trying to look to penalize somebody that's taken every effort
That's
that they
doing
can.
it.
You're
Absolutely,
going to
yeah.
find that every situation is different. And
Yeah.
that's why this is just a guideline.
Right.
Because there's going to be different circumstances which you'll want to take into consideration.
Right.
And some of that could be that they didn't keep up with the upgrades. They couldn't
Right.
afford that $600 a year to stay with the upgrades. I don't know.
Right.
But it's also, that's stuff that you can all consider
Right.
when and if there's a violation.
Or they just didn't scan it.
Right, there's the human factor.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we feel that we need to add 3 years for the
I would
under
add,
21?
I would say 5 years.
For the under 21 one,
Yeah.
but 3 for the one on the top?
I think the one on the top is less frequently violated, right? This is just,
Right. Right.
or you can put 5 for both. But I do think we should change the language in the third violation so that it's,
Read the sentence at the
it's a little-
top.
Up to the revocation of your
Yeah.
license?
Right, but if you look at the
The last
last
sentence.
sentence of paragraph 32, the board is not limited by these guidelines and may impose greater or less discipline as it sees fit.
Right.
That covers it.
So,
I-
again, as the chief was just saying, if this is their third violation, but they've done this and they've done that, and they've done this and they've done that,
Yeah.
they've done everything they can and one got by them, the board can say, all right, well, we're just going to suspend it or we're going to do whatever we're going to do, but
Yeah, I'd rather leave the language strong and be able to do it case by case, but the expectation is
Yeah,
that this is
yeah.
not tolerated.
But you have, just reading the paragraph below that, every person is a different incident.
Right,
That's what I
So
think
if
the chief said.
three people go in, you're on number 3 right off the bat.
right.
So you could lose your license if
Right.
one person doesn't card
And
3.
and again,
Right.
you get back to the latitude that the board has in their decision to count that as 3 or count it as one incident. If it's the same, or 3 going together type of situation. But in a worst-case scenario, 3 going together, and one of them doesn't make it home that night, and we find out about it, then the board has more latitude to inflict a more serious punishment. And again, it's all about, and I've experienced this over the years, that the board kind of appreciates a little bit of flexibility with these things, and they exercise good discretion with it. So, I don't think you'll ever be able to get that to something that fits in a box. I think you want to kind of keep it where you do have flexibility and discretion.
I did have one case in another life where there were 8 at a
Right.
restaurant, at a table, all underage getting served. And they
Right.
came into the board and they had taken enormous steps from when they were caught to when the board had their hearing. So the board whacked them pretty good in terms of suspension, but under their guidelines, they could have revoked the license. I mean, it was nuts.
Yeah.
Some of the kids had on high school jackets, high school letter jackets. and
Oh, my
getting
goodness.
served.
We're not that bad.
I'm inclined to agree with Tony, though, with the 5-year for the under 21, because that just, in my mind, makes it more severe, because you're extending
Okay,
the
well,
number of...
we can make that change.
Yeah, I think that, and just hearing what Karen is saying as well, that it should be stiffer for under 21, I think that helps us there, be a little bit more stiffer regulation too. Sean, what do you think?
I could go, this is their business. If they're serious and they want to get into this business, then they need to take it serious. We've seen over the years, people come in and think they want a beer and wine license, they're gonna, strike it rich. Okay, maybe you will, good luck to you, but you
Right.
better be prepared to, play by the rules.
Do it safely, yeah.
I think this sends that message. And the technology's there for them to protect themselves and protect the people of Scituate. And, and it also, they have financial benefit plus insurance benefits to doing it the right way. And that's what we're trying to encourage them to do.
I just hope we're not sitting here and an establishment does exactly that, gets all the updates, and the crooks are a step ahead of them,
Right.
and they get through.
Right.
That's
Right,
What's out of their control,
Right.
really.
yeah. And that's why this is just a piece of it, so there's lots of great enforcement, increased enforcement through the Scituate Police and compliance checks and the usual stuff to make sure it's happening. 'Cause there's always a human element, right? No matter how good the technology gets. Yeah.
So Jim, if you can just change that third violation that says, has a lower limit, like 12 days up to revoking of a license or something.
What, the third one
Yeah.
for 32? But I thought we agreed that that last sentence sort of covers that.
I know, but this is so definitively written there, where all the rest of them are kind of vague, I know technically it probably doesn't
Make a big difference.
make a big difference, but
So just so I have it correctly, you're saying number 32, third violation, you wanted to say up to revocation of license.
yeah, or,
That's not what he's looking for, is suspension of license in excess of 12 days on 6 weekends,
yeah,
or revocation of
up to,
license.
yeah.
For the second violation?
The third violation.
The third one, so copy the second one, or up to.
Combine
Or
the two.
up to.
All
Up
right.
to.
So we can go, we could do
Kind of
18,
minimum,
we could do
right.
20, we could do revoke it, we could do, and I know we can do that based on the last sentence, but
I get you. Do you want to do the same thing for the fourth violation above? Because that reads the same way, revocation of license.
And then we'll put,
preceding one.
We'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. I got it.
I know what they're looking for.
Yeah,
and then we'll add,
up to 5
the
years.
only violations occurred up to 5 for under 32.
Yeah.
Right, so
Mhm.
3 for 31 and 5 years for 32?
Yep.
So it goes on, okay.
3 years for 31 and 5 years for 32.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Do you, is the board comfortable voting with those changes, or would you like to see those changes before you vote the policy in?
I think we can vote with those.
Yeah, I'd be
Are you
comfortable,
okay, comfortable with
as
that?
amended.
Okay. All right. Any other questions as you look through it again? Any more discussion? Tony's reading.
I'm just reading, number 4 is the one where they have to install.
That's just
So-
for new or renewals, so not currently, the currently
Right.
licensed
But
don't
it
have to
doesn't,
do it yet.
should it say the kind that we want them to use?
That was Chief's idea, yeah.
We were going to, have a suggestion that this is the machine that works the best, and we can show
The
them.
recommended. you
Yeah,
know.
there's a list that recommended by the Massachusetts Package Store Association, or there's
That
something,
It's a little bit more stringent.
yeah.
Well, it's
Is
also,
there a certain model number?
It's hard to
Yeah.
absolutely steer them
Yeah.
to one vendor.
Right.
We have a few different vendors who put out a very good,
Yeah.
scanner.
But there's a list of approved ones.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we can,
But to Tony's, to Tony's point, if we're going to sit here and ask them to put in the best system,
Yeah.
and we're going to evaluate that violation based upon whether or not they have that best system or not,
Yeah.
we should put that language in here
Yep.
that indicates that we're recommending that they put in that
Mhm.
best system, whatever that
Yep.
is today. or-
Yeah.
I think we have to be careful with that. I think that providing the industry standard recommended list.
Yeah,
and let
that's
them-
fine, that's not here either. Yeah,
We'll have that, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to leave it that, because right now it's very vague.
Right,
It
'cause
just
they could
says
have the
license
one that doesn't
renewal.
catch it.
Right, just says,
I kind of threw a monkey
identification
wrench in
system.
this today
no, it's a good
by
one.
suggesting that we, steer people towards the better of the units.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't real time to get language down on how we were going to do that. But,
Yeah,
that can be done, and we can bring this back in 2 weeks, or
Yeah.
if you'd like to see that language.
Yeah,
I think just a recommended list
Yep,
is good.
There-
We don't want them to spend $50 and put something in to just.
to comply, right.
I agree 100% with Laura.
Yeah, so there's a list that is supported by the Massachusetts Package Board Industry Association, and also the insurance underwriter, so they have a common list. There's just one list, it's a short list.
Well, they're going to want to list
Yeah.
from that anyway.
Yep,
You can just add from a list, who's it, from the max?
there's the Massachusetts Package Store Association and the industry underwriters, let me see.
Say from a list approved by the Mass Package Store Association.
Yeah,
That should cover it.
Mass Pack, they call it.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
That'll cover it.
awesome.
Great, good job.
Thank you. Yeah.
So we're gonna just have a look, see how it's written, and then vote in 2 weeks.
Want
Next
to do that, or
meeting.
just voted as recommended amendments? I know I'm having a hard time this evening.
The words, the words.
Doesn't matter to me if Jim's comfortable. He knows what we want.
You comfortable with that? Okay. So why don't, because, we're getting into the season.
Yeah,
I'd rather keep this moving.
that would be great.
Okay. I think we're all in agreement with the changes.
Good.
Make a motion then?
Move to approve and implement alcohol rules and regulation policy 63-18 in the town of Scituate, effective June 1st, 2018, with the recommended additions as discussed.
Awesome.
Second?
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Ms. Canfield. Any further discussion? Comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Thank you all for
Thank
putting
you.
this all together.
Thanks for pulling
I think it
together.
really helps
It'll be
us
good.
out.
I'll come back with an update, how the scanner installs and stuff are going, a summer update. I expect.
Yeah, and you're going to proactively reach out to everybody once this is finalized.
And also, we should let them know that the money's only available until
Who's the end of September? Yeah.
end of September,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Jim, too, for putting that forward, and Lorraine. Okay, Lisa, welcome, just in time. So we have a presentation regarding the community choice aggregation policy. Lisa is our representative for a sustainable South Shore. We attended a fun meeting a couple of months ago.
I was telling you so.
So welcome, and just for the record, if you could all introduce yourselves when you get settled, that would be great.
Thank you. Well, again, good evening. My name is Lisa Scanlon. I'm one of two of the Board of Selectmen appointed Scituate representatives to Sustainable South Shore. And this is Lisa Bertola, a proactive, green-thinking Scituate resident and leader of Sustainable Scituate. And thank you for providing us with this opportunity to present the benefits of community choice aggregation for Scituate. Before we briefly review the community choice aggregation presentation that's probably in front of you, we would like to introduce and thank our guest experts. We have Patrick Roach from MAPC, the Metropolitan Planning Council, and Carol Oldham from MCAN, the Massachusetts Climate Action Network.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you.
And before I turn the floor over to Lisa, I ask that you just hold all questions till the end. We just want to present briefly, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Great, well, thank you again for this time and consideration of this notion of green aggregation or community choice aggregation that 20 cities and towns in the Commonwealth have already embarked on. We thought it was worthy of consideration and your attention. For myself, I've lived in the town a little over 20 years. I was helpful when the municipal power initiatives took place with the wind turbine and the solar arrays. I worked with Paul Reedy, Bill Limbacher, Jay Silver, Peter Toppin, and the DPW to kind of get the outreach, education, and information out about those endeavors. So I appreciate this 10 years later, doing this same sort of thinking and consideration for residents in the town. As a context, I just feel like I'm a mother of 3 children in Scituate, live on Elm Street, and I've watched, the weather get more and more severe and the cost to the town increase over time. So I am concerned from a green standpoint, but this actually, and I'm aware of, consumer issues, and I just felt that this issue actually had enough consumer protection issues as well, that it might be palatable and something that could actually work for the town, regardless of the green value of it. So I'm sure you've had this in advance, but I don't know how much you've gone through the presentation. I'll go through it quickly so that most of the time is really just answering, put towards answering your questions. So what is community choice aggregation? It is a process that is endorsed through the Massachusetts general law that allows a city or town to use a designated energy broker to switch the sourcing for the residential and small business electricity needs and still utilize the distribution and billing services of the local power supplier. So in our case, it would be National Grid. The default energy supply becomes the community aggregation source, but residents have the opportunity to opt out at any time and as many times as they want. They can come in or out as much as they want. The process involves approximately 6 steps. This is the first one that we come before you and ask the Board of Selectmen to consider this as an initiative that you sponsor actually before the town. And that requires an article being put on the warrant at the next town meeting or special town meeting if that's necessary in terms of the timing, and go to the voters and say, we think this might be worthy for the town, what do you think? And then sometimes that article by the board is coupled with an article from a group like ours, Sustainable Scituate or Sustainable South Shore, that would say, would like some green element to this process, adding a mandate for a certain level of green, Class 1 renewable local sourcing. So it's kind of the Board of Selectmen would be involved as well as another group if we get that kind of signatures that we need and whatnot to put that on the warrant. There's either the board acts as the board and oversees the process themselves, or they set up an energy committee like this town has done in the past to handle the procurement of a broker and letting the broker kind of go through an RFP process to, and first of all, design a plan that would, spell out and define what the objectives of the town are, and that would cover things like what the price parameters are. We don't want ratepayers to be affected to us, within a certain range, or we want a green element, or this is a 2-year or 3-year bid rate proposal, or all those parameters. That all gets defined, and we give it to the broker, and they go out to bid. The broker is paid by the suppliers that they end up securing, so there's a 1/1000th of a cent per kilowatt that goes towards paying this broker fee, so the town is this is no cost to the town. And then there are approval processes through the Department of Energy Resources and the Department of Public Utilities. They have to approve the plan. And actually, that approval occurs before the RFP actually is issued. So once the Department of Energy Resources and the Public Utilities approve the town's plan, that takes about 6 months from my understanding. Then an RFP is issued on behalf of the town, and we'll wait and see what suppliers come in and at what cost. In the meantime, the broker is also kind of charged with doing some education and outreach, or positioned to be ready to do education and outreach about how this would impact ratepayers and residents, and how they would opt out if they would like to say no thank you, and all the details. All the cost of that PR, and again, is handled by the broker that is selected. And then, the last step would be implementation, and again, continued education on this. There would be ongoing kind of process for education as ratepayers come on or off, and kind of monitor this. There's been green aggregation with 20 cities or towns in the Commonwealth so far, and Patrick will probably speak to that a little later. But we felt, and I think I've already covered a lot of this, that this was a logical progression since the municipal power is 100% handled through the wind turbine and the solar array. Thanks to the good stewardship of this board and prior members of the board, that it's always been something Scituate's been pointed to as a leader in the South Shore for doing sustainability and being a green community, not just for that, but for our recycling program, and Al Bangart and great people involved in this town. I love this town for that reason. And so it just seemed like a logical progression. Why not now the 18,000 ratepayers that we have that might benefit actually from this, and I'll explain more about that, and also be a little more environmentally friendly. It's minimal cost for a lot more control. There's been a lot of press actually about how National Grid's basic service is really, especially compared nationally, is no deal. Going out to bid is a very powerful process and can get rates very competitive. And, why not throw an environmental element as well? Like I say, if Scituate is in the front page news as the poster child for storm damage every year, why not take a leading role in this? And like a lot of other cities and towns have done and are considering doing. And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has already been trying to put their objective for 2020 at a higher level of the minimum renewable portfolio standard, or RPS as it's known, from like the current, which is 13%, I think, green mix to 20 by 2020. So a lot of cities and towns just say we can even do better and at the same price as basic service right now, so why not? It's a competitive market. And the more demand that's created for green energy, the more funding that is there, and it just kind of snowballs into more jobs. It's an $11 billion industry in Massachusetts. It does create a lot of jobs, but demand has to be there, so creating that demand is really important. And we feel that that's worthy of consideration. So I think that explains kind of why we thought this is, something to consider. For the consumer-friendly features, again, competitive bidding can get this. I think the rates could be even a savings compared to National Grid basic service right now. It protects the residents' ability to say no thank you at any time, as many times as they want. No thank you, I've shopped for green power, I like my choice. Or no thank you, I'm going to go back to National Grid basic service. No problems, no penalties, and you can do that as many times as you wish. And I have to say, what we've learned, this timing is really great, because what we've learned from the cities and towns that have done it is a lot about behavior. And one of the things that they've illustrated really well is that if it's the default, people are busy, people don't have time to get informed on all their options and worry if this is the best choice, are my rates fixed, are they variable? It's like shopping for anything, mortgages or whatever. This takes a little bit of the thinking out of the hands of people in a safe way, and a well-vetted way that the town and their broker have embarked on. And it really kind of protects the consumer by fixing a rate for a 2 to 3 year period. No more highs in the winters, lows in the summer. Where we have a tourist population in Scituate, that means in the summer when the population doubles, some of those tourists would actually subsidize, if they paid that flat rate, they're subsidizing versus now where the rate goes up in the winter and down in the summer. It could be great to get, the added ratepayers in at a fixed rate, where there's a little subsidy there. And any kind of subsidies that exist currently for people that are getting assistance for their energy bill, or any other deals that people have for their energy, do not get affected by this at all. So, and it helps educate people about their options, which I think has some value too. And I just, on that note, I want to mention that whether it's permissible or not right now, there are people knocking on doors in Scituate peddling green energy. And it's a problem. We have an elderly population that's at risk about falling, into the hands of misinformation. All of us are at risk, but I get the calls at least 2-3 times a day. I get them even at work. And so even though they're not supposed to do it, there's a lot of shenanigans going on in the energy business, because there's money to be made. And this would actually give people a safe bet that again, they can say no to, but at least it's been vetted and approved. So I think I went over the steps already. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick Roach from Metropolitan Area Planning Council. He, I think, can add some information about the other cities and towns that have done this.
Yeah, sure, thank you. So just so everyone's aware, the MAPC is the regional planning agency for Greater Boston, the 101 cities and towns of Greater Boston. So I'm in our clean energy group, and we work with the cities and towns to help them reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So a few years ago, a number of our cities and towns were looking at aggregation, interested in it for the economic benefits that we just heard a lot of those described, as well as the potential for it to have an environmental benefit. And so for now about 3 years, we've been helping cities and towns investigate this and roll these programs out. So I can talk a little bit about that and maybe some more in the Q&A, but we've recently launched programs under we helped a number of cities and towns select a vendor, the sort of broker or consultant that you use. So under that program, last summer, we launched programs in Somerville, Sudbury, Winchester, Arlington, and Brookline. And then we've also have a number of communities that are before that, the Department of Public Utilities now, who are going through that state review process that you heard about, who hope to launch next year. And so some of those are, you've got Gloucester, Hamilton, Millis, Rockland, and Bedford. So we've been very excited by the uptick, and so in total there's sort of about 20 communities, as we heard, that are rolling out this model of green aggregation. The Cape Light Compact, which is actually the oldest aggregation in the state, they also very recently made a move for their 28 or so municipalities to have a green element as well, so that's an extra sort of 28 you could add on to that. And we're really thrilled to see the city of Boston authorize doing green aggregation just last October, so they hopefully will be rolling it out. So it's, and I think what we've been showing through the implemented programs is our very competitive prices, even with this green. And Carol, who is a resident of Brookline, went and has added the most extra green out of any of the communities, and is actually still seeing really good rates, which is really encouraging. So I'm happy to talk more about the experiences of those towns, and I think I'll also just mention that it's a good time that, we're talking sort of now in the late spring. The timeline from sort of this stage often to being able to actually have power flowing is often, I would say, a full year is a good amount of time, and typically the best times to go out to bid for your electricity supply are in they call them the shoulder seasons, so either the fall or the spring. And often the fall is great because once you do go out for the electricity supply and you've signed a contract, there's a period of time where you have to do, or you really do a robust education process, so people are aware of the program, what's going to happen, when it's going to start, and they're even given a chance to say they don't want to participate ahead of that. As you heard, they can always opt out or get back in, but even before it starts, they're given an opportunity. So often these programs launch in the winter, and so I believe there may be a special town meeting in the fall. If that was a place, a time when you could pass the authorization language that we heard about, that would really put you in a great place to be through the approval process by the fall of next year and implementing probably in the winter. It's pretty rare to implement programs in the summer, and I can talk more about that, but I think it's a good time to be having this discussion. So I think finally I'll just say that many of you may have seen the Attorney General's report that came out a few weeks ago about the energy suppliers who are knocking on doors, as we heard, and it was really a scathing report about the fees and the penalties that get charged to people, and what the rates are, that they're very not competitive. Having a municipal aggregation program is a really great way to have a well-vetted program that has no penalties, no fees for your residents, and the education process is really important, and I think it's a great way to engage with, particularly some of the populations that you mentioned, the senior citizens and others who can often be more susceptible to those offers. And then I think it's also, really important to think about a lot of people who do want to, use clean energy or embrace clean energy. They may not own a home, or their roof may not be, suitable for solar. This is a way to expand the benefits of clean energy to a lot of different people. So I'll leave it there, and happy to answer more questions. Yeah. Do you want to add anything, or?
Sure, I can just tell you guys a little bit about what we did in Brookline, which is basically we did two pieces. So it's an elected town meeting. I actually have since moved to Jamaica Plain, so I am no longer a Brookline resident. But we had an elected town meeting in Brookline, and I was an elected town meeting member. And so what we did was we did two pieces. One piece was brought by the Board of Selectmen, and that's literally just language that's required by the state law that says we enable the Board of Selectmen to look into green aggregate or into community choice aggregation. And then a group of us citizens brought a resolution that said we'd like the program to include 25% additional clean energy. So the baseline is the 13% that's required by state law right now. And we said, you know what, it's Brookline, let's up it by 25%. And the Board of Selectmen said, what if we can't get 25%? What if it proves to be outrageously expensive? And we said, that's why it's a resolution. We trust you guys, but we want to have your back. And we want to show you that the people in town want to see this. And so, and it was one of those hilarious situations where we had an almost unanimous vote. There was one person who voted against the resolution, and he said it doesn't go far enough. And that was his reason for voting against it. But we were very clear with all of, with the advisory committee, with the finance committee, with the Board of Selectmen, that the resolution is there for guidance and to show the political will in town meeting, but that the enabling language is really, that's the legal piece, that's what gets it done. So I think that's the plan here as well, ideally, is that you all would submit a warrant with that enabling language piece, and then Sustainable Scituate could do the piece that's specifically about the green aggregation.
And I think to Carol's point, and either of you can answer this, the process of discovering what the tolerance of, what the right level of green is, 25%, more or less, whatever it is, can be determined as the process rolls forward. It doesn't have to be determined now or in advance.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. That's what I thought.
Lots of information.
Yeah.
I know.
Great, thank you. It's much clearer than reading it. Listening to you, because as you read it, my mind goes in circles. Kara, I don't know who wants to start and who has, I know we all have questions. So Karen, did you want to start?
A couple of things I just wanted to, a couple of questions, a couple of clarifications. So in entering an aggregate compact of some sort, how does that, and this may be a Jim question, how does that impact our existing contracts with our solar array and our wind turbine, or does it not at all?
It doesn't, because this would be for the homeowners, those contracts are for our energy.
Okay. Yeah, it is, when you read it, it's very complicated. And one of the big things that you alluded to is that we get hit hard here. And so emergency management and repairs and knowing who's going to come and put the lights back on, what's your experience? Sorry?
National Grid. If you look at your energy bill now, you have a supplier cost and an energy cost.
Right.
So wherever you're buying your power from, National Grid is responsible for getting it here.
Okay, so that doesn't change.
But to Karen's point, do they move
That
faster or
doesn't,
slower?
that doesn't change.
It doesn't change.
They don't
So-
lose any money.
They're not a supplier.
It doesn't
They get all the
impact.
money.
They don't sell energy anymore, they just bring it.
Okay.
I know,
And typically, a broker agreement, is that something that's a term? And like, if you're not happy, then how long is that term limit normally?
Typically, the term is coincident with the length of the supply agreement you sign. So what you would do is you'd start off, and they would take you through that first full year of getting you up to having a supply agreement and get power flowing, and then you would be through, if you signed a 2-year term, would be through that.
Okay,
But
and
there's,
so you'd review that at the same time?
Yep.
But for instance, Brookline signed a 30-month contract, so you can go a little bit longer if you are getting a great rate and you feel like this is something that you really want to lock in.
Okay. Those are my big questions.
So now I have more questions. So the town locks into a contract for X amount of months, but the individuals don't have to. You just said they can in and out, and I wrote down no fees.
Yeah,
nothing.
essentially, the individual participants can come in and out, but the town could cancel the contract at some point, but that would essentially be terminating your entire program. So yeah, individuals have the ability to move in and out.
And you mentioned 20 towns, and in the beginning you mentioned larger cities, Brookline, some of them, Scituate, 18,000 is very attractive, and then you mentioned the Cape. So I guess,
Yeah.
well, maybe the Cape is a group. So is Scituate attractive? I mean,
Yeah, the way, so yeah, a lot of times people say, well, the utilities got the biggest buying power, so how can anyone beat them? And the way it works is that the state has sort of tied the utilities' hands, and because they can't make money off of it anymore, as we were just talking about, they can only go out to bid at very specific times of the year. They go twice a year for about 50% of their power, so they can't avoid a bad market or take advantage of a good market. So your advantage is in your scale, which even at a small town size is already very large and very attractive. But then it's going and locking into a rate when the market is in the right spot.
okay, so even if a lot of people didn't buy in, it's still attractive?
Yes, and the reason is that it's, I think as we heard, it's a default. The default is that it's an opt-out program. So anyone who has not already made a decision to work with a different supplier would be given notice and then switched over unless they had said, I don't want to be in. So there is certainly attrition that happens, but it tends to be like, less than 10% or around 10%. Yep.
I don't want to hog up all the questions, I'll have one or two later.
But actually, just to stress that, I think one of the things that, as a climate organization, that we actually really like about it is the fact that by default you're in. And one of the things is that a lot of times people, they really want to do the right thing on clean energy, and they get lost in the research, right? Like, it's very confusing. You don't know, like, is it better if it's in Massachusetts? Does it matter if it's in Maine? Does it matter if it's in Texas? And one of the nice things about these programs is that, the town makes those decisions, and there are those two layers of protection at the state level where they're looking at the plan and they're making sure that the Attorney General's office and the Department of Utilities are looking at the plan and making sure that everything's legit in there.
Yeah, and I think the cities and towns that have done it, I think Patrick mentioned, since it's the default, what happens is only approximately 10% opt out. So you've got usually 90% that stay with it. And if you made it an opt-in program where people had to choose this, you'd only get the 10% versus the 90.
Yeah.
So it's making it the default is a very effective strategy to get the most buy-in.
And I'll just add that the way the law is written, it has to be an opt-out program. There's no version of it that is opt-in. Yeah.
But people are the communities that have done it have been very happy with it.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation. My initial thought is I obviously like the green initiative, and the town's been supportive of it all the time. Right now, you can do this on your own. You can go, I do it myself. I don't get my energy from National Grid. I get it from whoever I saw, Constellation, I think, or somebody else. I'm kind of hesitant to force people to make a decision on their energy needs by changing a default when they can do it on their own if they really want to. So and my sense is that it's going to cost them more money, because we're forcing a green initiative and in some instances forcing an initiative above what the standard is. It just seems to me that we're going to increase people's energy bills based on the board's thought on green energy. And I don't, something about that just doesn't feel right with me. And especially when they can do it on their own. It seems to me it's a little bit backwards, where we should be going to people and saying, here's an opportunity for you if you want to do it. You can do it. Be green, be really green, be kind of green, or do this. And it just seems, I feel like we're trying to play Big Brother a little bit in terms of making people change to a new vendor.
You're right. Oh, I was just going to
Yeah,
say, and
well, let me-
Patrick can speak much better to this
I mean,
than I can.
well, let me just finish for 1 second, Lisa, because, and I don't know anything about it. I had a lot of trouble reading it like Laura did. Yeah, I understand a lot more that you've explained it. How much kilowatts does a town typically do? Because my sense is that the broker's going to make out a little bit in this deal. What's the kilowatt hours that a small town typically does?
Don't have that off the top of my head, but yeah, the broker does. The broker, yeah, they do get that they call it the mill fee, and
Right.
so that the big thing is they do the program sort of at least at risk, because from the day that you say we're interested in this until you're actually signing and getting power flowing, you can stop the process at any time. And then, but the other big piece is they're handling all of the materials and for outreach, education, and all that sort of stuff. Which if you do it right, I think is should be a lot of materials on that.
So it seems like and that cost is being passed on to the consumer.
Yes.
Even though it's minimal on my bill, but in
Right.
totality, it could be a nice amount.
But I will say.
Let me just finish, and then you guys can tell me where I'm wrong. So that's my sense, is that it's a little bit backwards, that if you wanted to do it, you could just call up and do it, as opposed to us coming in and saying, surprise, because 90% of the people don't change because they don't even know. They don't even look at their bill.
Right.
They just write a check and they pay it and they go on. So I just feel that there's a little bit of manipulation there, I guess, so.
Yeah,
So now tell me,
I was going to say, I know Patrick can speak better to this than I can, but I kind of felt the same way you did initially, until I started thinking about it, and I'm like, all right, well, we already have National Grid as Big Brother telling us what we get. Really? I mean, because they're the ones who make all the decisions and stuff, whereas this way, we can, as a town, at least just say, minimally, we want this amount of, say, green energy, or we want these parameters for our pricing. Right now, we don't have any say at all. It's just National Grid coming in and saying, this is what your rates are, and this is what you get. And, so it's not really a choice in that way.
I feel it's a valid concern, and I believe it or not, even though I am a professed environmentalist, whatever, I totally agree with you that there's a certain marketing, or if you want to say manipulation, given that it would be the default. However, to Lisa's point, one could argue that fossil fuel industry subsidies are hidden in the default power that National Grid has. There's policies above town level that get created about why dirty power is actually the cheapest. And some of the reason it continues to be the cheapest, and I'm not sure that's going to last very long, is that the demand hasn't grown enough in renewables. So until this demand is put in through creative competitive bidding, which is exactly what this is, by cities and towns and local efforts, then the tide will turn. And that's happening swiftly, I think more swiftly than any of us even imagined it would. Like I say, renewables in Massachusetts are $11 billion industry and growing. So the demand I think it'll change quickly. Carol can attest the town of Brookline, even with a 25% mandate, is on par with the basic service rate for Eversource. On par.
It's actually slightly less.
Slightly less.
For 25% additional clean energy.
Because of this competitive bidding advantage of doing it, like Patrick said, when we know the market's prime or competitive, and locking in, and these brokers, although they're making a fee, they're doing a lot of work, and they're out there fishing for the best deal. And I know on my own research, I contacted a couple of them, and they're foaming to come work with Scituate because, you know, any town, they're just excited because they know it can be a win for the town. It's good PR, it's good clean energy, which is popular right now, and so it seems like the win-win-win-win-win is actually becoming very obvious. So if there's a manipulative side to the default issue, I think it's way offset by potential savings on rates. Doing nothing has a cost. We're paying National Grid default rates at more than 90%, most of the towns on National Grid, because we don't have the time to research and do all those things. So what's the cost of not doing this? Not to mention the environmental impact.
Yeah. And to kind of keep adding to what you said, I think, at least you made a great point that someone is already making a choice about where you're getting your power from and how it's being contracted. And so it is a chance for local control over that. But there are a couple other things I think to add. So the first would be that your decision to put this on the warrant would be then turning it over to town meeting to make a vote to decide. So I think that's important. The other thing I think is that it is possible as an individual to find good rates in the market. It generally takes a lot of diligence, and you're going to need to stay on top of it. And as a result, we really haven't seen many homeowners in general move to the competitive market. Or for those we have the Attorney General's report that came out that shows that the majority of people are getting taken advantage of in that market. And one of the ways that aggregation is fundamentally different from you individually going out is that generally for those companies to acquire customers, it's a high marketing effort per customer. An aggregation is suddenly could be 18,000 households for comparatively little effort, so they can offer fundamentally different rates than, you know, as a result because of that, because they're not expending the same sort of costs to go after those customers, and then also it's a larger opportunity. So it is an opportunity that often individual homeowners don't have the ability to go out and get that kind of rate. Not that it's impossible, but most people don't, or the ones who do, the track record isn't great on it.
And just as a last point, which has been said before, but just to say it again, is until you get to the point where you sign the contract with the broker, like they go out and they write the plan on spec for you. If they come back with a plan and they say, sorry, we can only do it where it's going to cost people $10 more a month on their electric bill, you can say, no, thank you. And you don't have to sign anything with them. So if it's something, if the plan comes back and it's something that the town feels uncomfortable with, you don't have to do it.
So what research did, these towns do to identify, this opting in and out that consumers will have? Any billing issues that are a result of that process? Because it sounds like people are in, they're out.
You still get your bill actually from National Grid.
Right, no, I understand that, but if they're, how does that communication work with regards to, okay, I don't want the aggregate plan anymore, I want to just do whatever National Grid is doing, for January, and then all of a sudden in March, they want to change.
Yeah.
What is that process?
Sure. So to kind of walk through how it would look from even the beginning of this process, once that supply contract is signed, before the program starts, at a minimum, there's a letter that goes out to every household who would be opted in, explaining what the program is, what the rates would be, what the utility rate is at the time, and explaining that if they want to stay in, they do nothing, or they can check a box, put it back in the mail, and they'll be opted out. That's the bare minimum, and programs always go much more beyond that in terms of there's always a web component, so you can, on the town's website, there's a link to a page where you can opt out online and also see all that same information. There's community meetings and those kind of things, but that would be the beginning of it. And then once the program's in operation, there would be that web link would continue, and you could opt out generally through the web really at any time. It usually takes one billing cycle, depending on when you contact them. And then, yeah, as Carol was saying, your bill's still the same, and that energy line would either say basic service or the name of the aggregation that you're on.
But no sort of history of problems with that?
Yeah, we have not heard problems on the billing side. Yeah, the utilities and the suppliers are well coordinated. At least in the programs that we've run, the consultant has made sure that the people, the company is allowed to bid on it. It's not their first aggregation, because it is different running an aggregation than working with large corporate clients, because you have, say, 18,000 accounts you need to deal with. And so it is really important. So that's something that we've looked at as part of the vendor selection process, is making sure the supplier has a good track record of operating aggregations and being able to handle that.
And I just have one last question. You have another one, because the other ones were answered. When you say minimal costs to the town and the taxpayers, that's just the cost of the process of hiring the broker or the RFP, right? Anything additional on top of that?
I would say, just kind of looking at everything, when you roll out the program, the first few weeks, there's going to be a lot of phone calls into town hall. And after that, it kind of dies down, and the consultant or the broker is the one who also is handling all that. But people will still call town hall because they won't read the phone number or what. So, but that process, what we've seen, really happens for that first few weeks, that first month, when people maybe notice, oh yeah, I do see that thing in my bill, and I guess I saw something about it in the mail but didn't read it. So you get those calls, and so there is some staff time, like in the very initial part, but in general, those costs you describe are the costs, yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity to put before our residents, and we're not going to vote on it tonight, but, because we have a lot to look into, but a lot of questions. One minute, I'll be with you in a moment, ma'am. Sean, I know you have another question.
Yeah, one moment, I can wait.
Go ahead.
So if Scituate should opt into this program, what are there programs that exist now through National Grid? Early boiler replacement, air conditioning, things like this. Those go away if we opt?
No, you have still full access to the Mass Save Energy Efficiency Program, and for people who might have solar panels on their house, net metering credits stay the same. So that, and also if someone is getting on a low income rate with the utility, that happens on the distribution side of the bill or the delivery side of the bill, not the supply side. So those would be unaffected as well.
Yes, ma'am, did you have a question?
Actually, I just wanted to make a comment.
Just your name? Your name and address.
Yes, Kathy Cerruti, 65 Brook Street. And just a comment from a homeowner who actually has been opting in for, I guess, green choice through National Grid for a few years. Feeling kind of like a little island of one, that I do this, and not having the time to do the research. I always think, oh man, am I paying more, am I paying too much, or I should be researching that. And this effort just feels like a great way for somebody to have my back, like my community. And it seems like Scituate is, there's like precedent that we kind of lead the way down here, and I love that about this town. We got the turbine, we were one of the first green communities. It just seems like, this seems like a logical step for Scituate. Also, having a lot of family on the Cape, I'm familiar with, is it called Cape Cod Compact, something like that? Yeah, and I know the feeling down there is that they feel like they have more control, that it's like their community is buying the energy and making good choices instead of just being like us being slaves to National Grid. So you feel like you're doing good, you feel like you have more control, and you actually have better rates. I know the Cape Cod Compact had better rates. So there's a feeling, I just know from having family down there, that it's just a good feeling that your community has your back, they're going to bat, buying the best energy for you at the best rates. And, Joe average homeowner, including myself, just doesn't have the time to do this kind of research. So it's just great to hear this.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If I could just clarify one point about the cost. When you mentioned the cost of the broker and the cost of the program, that 1/1000th of a kilowatt fee that the broker is getting from the suppliers pays for that.
Yeah.
So it's not a cost to the town.
So it's not, okay.
Sorry, to be clear, yeah, there is no out-of-pocket cost to the town.
Thank you for clarifying that.
The broker's getting it from the supplier.
The supplier.
Yeah, and the supplier is,
That makes sense.
yeah, and the supplier is collecting the
Right.
fee, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would be, I mean, I obviously like the green initiative side of it. If there was some sort of guarantee that it would be cheaper than the base rate that National Grid is charging now, then I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. I feel a little awkward raising people's prices for an initiative that they may not be supportive of.
Well, isn't that what the broker would do, is to ensure that the supplier that they chose is going
No,
to
they'd get the
lesser?
best rate that they could.
No, we give them the parameters, and we can
Right.
say it cannot.
You can say that.
exceed
You can say it's got to be the same
Or less.
or within a certain margin of existing rates right now, and you can literally define that in the
You can
plan.
dictate that.
Yep.
Yeah.
We can say that, we could speak on behalf of all the residents. The elderly that might not get it, that might slip by them, so we can protect them. That's what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
One thing that we've recommended to the folks in Boston is to basically say, let's get all the green energy that we can while keeping bills exactly the same. So you could say that.
Right. Did you have another question, Karen?
Just one question, and I hope I didn't miss it when my computer blew up. But do you, if we were, so you said Rockland's already in, so could you see a coalition forming regionally that would assist all of us? And how has that worked in other communities?
Yeah, so that's definitely a possibility. For a few years now, MAPC has been working. We did a procurement with a few of our communities, actually on behalf of our entire MAPC region, for sort of to work with a selected broker. We've been working with that broker, Good Energy, for a few years, and they did a group purchase, or they coordinated a group of 23 communities on the South Shore to do this. They created a buying group that was about as large as the city of Boston, I think, would be. So it's definitely possible. When we did it most recently with the 5 municipalities I mentioned earlier, they all decided to go out individually and still got great rates. So it's definitely something that is possible and has been done, but isn't not necessary.
The one thing that I will say is that a group of Western Mass towns went in together, and there were some issues. Just it was a lot of little towns. They were much smaller than Scituate, and it got a little administratively difficult in the process with the Department of Public Utilities. And so, like for instance, they weren't able to be as responsive as a couple of towns would have been, because it was like herding cats, because there were like 41 towns or something that were doing it together. So it might make sense to do a couple of towns, but it actually, as Patrick said, there doesn't seem to be any financial disadvantage in going along.
Great.
I mean, they're getting 9,000 customers
Right.
Yeah.
at the flip of a switch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for the board?
No.
Any other questions from the public?
Just one comment. Gwen Morgan, I'm on Sustainable Scituate also, 175 Judge Cushing Road. And so I've been wanting to get more green energy, and the one that you do is more expensive. And so a few years ago, looked into Viridian, which is one of the ones that's knocking on the doors and all that. And I went for it because it was more green, and I just figured, they said it was competitive, but so my 2-year contract came up just like maybe 4 months ago, and I found that I was paying a bit more. And so I got out. Into your question about changing, so I called National Grid and I said, okay, my contract's up, and what am I going to do? And they said, it'll just change. You know, you don't even have to cancel. So if anybody, I think, in town wanted to opt out, it just kind of happens. There's just communication. Can you vouch for that, between energy sources, that if, you know, we did this aggregate, which I'm totally for, and I think, you know, as a community, we would be remiss not to, but they have such a supply and demand, they just really, it's an easy transformation to go back to National Grid. And like somebody said, the communication between the energy suppliers is, it's just there.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, so it's just easy. I personally went through that.
Well, thank you all. It's a lot of information. I think, you know, we'll put it up, do a little research and put it on an upcoming agenda to vote on it. So you'll know, and then the next step would probably if we vote to approve to go this way, would be to put an article on special town meeting. I'm looking at Jim, he's not looking at me, but I would assume that would be.
Put it on an article for special town meeting.
Yeah. Like that.
I'm bored.
But thank you, you know,
No
you're
hockey game on
also,
tonight, I'm not watching.
you're also very well versed in all this, and we appreciate, you know, you all coming in and explaining it to us, and thank you. It's great.
Thank you. And anyone here is available for further questions, I think,
absolutely.
if they come up.
We'll take you up on
email
it.
addresses.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Great night.
All righty.
Okay, next on the agenda is an update from the Sister City trip to Ireland. Brenda O'Connor and Pat Card and Jamie Gilmore, welcome.
It's Betty Tfanction.
Oh, Betty's there?
Yep.
I didn't know Betty was coming.
I thought it was support.
With us. Come on up.
So excited.
This is the first, the cardinal rule of any teacher or presenter is you never hand out your materials before you speak, because people are going to look at them. But we're doing it on purpose, because we want you to look at them.
So Brenda, just for the record, if you could just introduce yourself and the board members, and then we know why you went, but just sort of give an update as to how we got to this point.
Okay. I'm Brenda O'Connor, Chair of the Scituate West Cork Sister City Committee. And next to me is Pat Jacquard, who is Chair of the French City, Sister City, Sucy-en-Brie. And next to her is Betty Tfanction, who is on both our umbrella committee, which is the Scituate Sister City Project, and the Sucy-en-Brie, and Jamie Gilmore from the advisory committee, who represented the town of Scituate. A year ago this month, actually, the Board of Selectmen interviewed candidates for a place on the committee. Mara was about to go to Ireland. And we had our first committee meeting last September. So 8 months ago, we started to work. And before we begin our report, Jamie has a presentation for you.
We, on the day we arrived that Saturday, we were rushed from the airport to get cleaned up, to go to a nice lunch, which was wonderful, and then we were escorted right across to this Skibbereen Heritage Society that we signed the agreement on behalf of. So I now present you with this agreement.
Thank you.
It's called a twinning agreement.
In Ireland, they call it twinning rather than sister city, so we had a little give and take
Between the
on
Cork
that.
County Council Municipal District of West Cork and the town of Scituate, Massachusetts.
That's great.
That's awesome.
They know how to make a nice-looking contract, don't they?
They do. They do.
And I have to also, before we begin, give a special shout out to Michelle, because just before we went, I think. Segesi, excuse me. Just before we went, Pat, Michelle, and I met. It was within a day or two of our flying, and we were trying to make sure our gifts were in order and such. And as we were getting up to leave, Michelle said, "What if we do a video?" So she has to have a shout out. It was the most brilliant idea, and it was received so well. The Skibbereen Heritage Center is an amazing site, but their main room was set up with chairs for the ceremony. And they had a smaller room, so we all went in there and stood and watched the video. The oohs and ahs were amazing. They thought Jim was terrific. They thought Mara was terrific. But I have to tell you, the star was the Cork lad, Brian Houlihan. They loved him, they said, that's a
How come they
perfect...
not like their own?
I know,
That's a
exactly.
perfect pint he poured, and this, that, and I've been an eavesdropper all my life, and I was eavesdropping as I walked around, and they're saying, did you see the cork lad? Wasn't that a perfect pint, and blah, blah, blah. So he really was the star, as much as you people were appreciated. But it was the best idea.
No.
It was the best idea ever, and Michelle, it was Michelle's.
Yes.
It was fabulous, and having the aerial views coming into Scituate, it really showed off the town very, very well. So a lot of people are going to be coming. And in West Cork, there are 32 towns and villages, and we appeared with all of them. Some have 90 people living there year-round, some have 4,000, but combined, it is our twin or sister city. And if you look through just the pictures of the report, you will see the reception we had was incredible. From the moment our planes landed, the green carpet was out. This was a 5 out of 5 Shamrock trip. We had a little complication. Murphy and McCarthy are two of the most prominent names in Cork, so of course we shouldn't have been surprised when Murphy's Law took effect. And 3 people here had their plane canceled, and they didn't get out till 2 days after they were scheduled to leave, which was a complication for them and also for the Cork County Council. They had these days planned. If you see the plan, it went 9 o'clock and it went till about 11 o'clock when they would drop us back. Precisely, half hour by half hour planned. So they were going to miss 2 days. And they were under no obligation in the Cork Council to make up those days, but they did. They planned different activities, and it was quite amazing. I have to say that the mayor of Cork County was with us for, I would say, a minimum of 4 meals. We never had less than 2 Cork County councilors with us at any time. We often had 5 or 6. At dinners, we sometimes had 22 people. The entire council, the people in the towns, are all thrilled with this partnership. They really want to make a go of it. They couldn't have been more hospitable to us. They showed us their very best. We had suggested a couple of months ago that they have a very vibrant food scene, as do we, and that this might be a wonderful way to begin our exchanges. And we have the most wonderful announcement tonight. West Cork has a food festival every September, and it is carried out in all 32 towns. There's activities all over the last 2 weeks. They have guest chefs from around the world, and Scituate 2 chefs have been invited to participate. It is quite an honor, and we are thrilled, and Brian Houlihan is one, and he is choosing the second, because I don't know anything about chefing. He does, so he is doing that. But it is a great, great honor. World-renowned chefs are there. In fact, a Taste of West Cork Food Festival Committee entertained us at a dinner. There were 22 of us there. It was at a Michelin-rated restaurant. And the pictures of what we ate are on page 3.
What some of us say, Brenda was a little timid.
I was the only one. I don't like smoked mackerel.
I was with you on that, too. actually.
I like mackerel, I don't like smoked mackerel. And I did have a bite. And that was the top picture on the right with the green there. It was served on a piece of seaweed. There was a a seaweed piece that looked like beef jerky, and there was another one that looked like a cookie. I did taste the one with the cookie. It had less of the smoked mackerel on, but I was the only one in the whole group that didn't eat it. It was noted, too. But I told them, it's me, not you.
Well, it was fabulous.
And, but that evening, the wine served with dinner, I just know was not two buck chuck, which I would have been used to, but it was wine that was commensurate with the meal, and just outstanding. Before that, for lunch, we had gone to Hare Island, and that restaurant is open June 15th to September 15th. The chef was a chef at the Ritz in Paris, and he was a professor of cuisine in Paris. And we had a fabulous meal there. There's no menu. You just serve whatever he decides to cook that day.
So they opened it specifically?
Yes. It was open specifically, and this happened every place we went. That museums were closed to the public, so we could have them to ourselves. At our lunch, it was filet mignon for lunch, and it closed with the individual hot lemon soufflés.
Which we heard being made.
We heard
them whipped while we ate, yes.
Does the French treat you as well, Pat?
They do,
Treat us
yes,
really well.
they do. Yeah, no, they do. They're just, the nice thing is both groups are so excited to have us as sister cities, and they're so hospitable. And so I would say, coming from, Betty and I came from the previous experience in France, and we were not at all disappointed when we went, to Ireland. So we're just Scituate is lucky to have both places.
The details generally in this report, so we're not going to go over all of them right now, but we had to leave out. I mean, there are tons of details that we couldn't even include in this. We tried to be brief. But they are certainly committed. One of the things that I thought was that we learned from them was to be very focused and purposeful. Every single event had a reason. The invitees were there for a reason. We were introduced. At one point, Pat and Betty, on one of the last days, walked around the town of Skibbereen in and out of shops. People knew them. Yeah. Hi, Pat. Hi, Betty. They were at the signing ceremony, and so the entire community was behind this. The county council was very committed to it. So the next step, we think, is, number one, a thank you note has to come from the Board of Selectmen to the mayor, from the administrator to the CEO of Cork County, thanking them for our treatment and also inviting them. Believe me, they're coming before Thanksgiving even. They're coming this fall. We feel very strongly from the hints that we received. They want to come, and they will be here soon. And we have to start planning, because theirs was planned so well and executed perfectly. And we have to show them that same respect.
Well, it's a little bit different too, right? We're going to have to work with a lot of our partners in town,
yes,
our businesses to
they did as well.
The importance, because
yeah,
unlike them, this is taxpayer money, and we've got to be careful with what we do, but also.
But this was
taxpayer money.
Yeah.
This was.
But that's what I mean. But it's different for them than for us, I think. Too. We've just got to make sure we.
This is one of the things that we say, that we have to sit down now and think of creative ways of funding.
Right. Exactly.
Yes.
There have to be, not to give away secrets, but I had this conversation with Brian, and I said Brian Houlihan, and I said, one of the things is we have to have a clam bake, because it's so New Englandy, and he said he could do it at a huge discount, knowing Lobsterman, knowing the oyster people in Duxbury and all of this, that it could be planned without being the extravaganza that one would think it would be. And I think we have to plan in a smart fashion, we have to plan in a focused fashion, and we have to get the commitment of the community. That I think we all experience the extreme commitment of everyday people right up to the person in charge of the council. At every museum, they closed it, as I said, to the public. We came in by ourselves, and they had an expert with us as the docent. And they were quite incredible. Anything we said that we wanted, they did. That,
Could I just?
Yes, please.
I think we don't have to be intimidated by, doing exactly the same thing, 2 meals a day, in restaurants all the time. They're known as the food capital of Ireland, so it's a little, different. And you're surrounded by sheep and cows and that are providing much of, and fish that we ate. But I think where we want to do nicely, but we have connections with, various sources for different ways. We don't have to do exactly the same thing. And I think that the two areas where we know that we really want to do, which they did for us, and we have the experience already of doing it with our, French guests and dignitaries that come over, is finding the common points and where we both can share and have reciprocal experiences. And so we're used to having the Historical Society follow us on, on trips. We have good connections at the JFK, and Brenda has others at, at BC. And so our museums around, we can do very similar things.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a really, really nice connection.
I think the focus is to be focused and to pre-plan. And so I think we have to start planning now. And I think the visit would be 4 to 5 days. And, but the biggest expense, I think, is going to be a van of some sort to carry people around. Those can be very expensive. But we have to meet with people in town and ask for their support. Businesses, associations, people who have Irish heritage that want to sponsor something.
I wouldn't worry, I think it's great. I think you guys should put together a proposed plan that's similar to what they did, and then we'll work out the details and go through it once you get a layout together. It should be a great event, just like every event has been that we've gone to France and we've gone there, and we should take it seriously like we have in the past, and there will be an outpouring from the public to support it. So
I would think so.
I think it would be very positive.
How long were they here when they were here last time?
See, they were.
One day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
One
right,
day.
yeah.
They were here for
That's the one
something
day,
else.
I remember.
Oh, you did? It was
Yeah.
fantastic, and but only a few, you only met a few of them. So Declan Hurley, you met. And, Seamus McGinnis came to see us on the departure.
Oh,
when
yeah.
we were on the way to the airport, which
He
was
had
really
lunch with
nice.
us,
Yeah. But, yes, and that was all, which we talked about there, that was our only chance to really see them and show them. It was just one day because that's all they had. And they fondly recounted what we had done for them.
Yes, they
So,
appreciated it.
yeah. But I'm glad that so many want to come back here now and see us on a more, a calmer, more spread out, so they really get to know us and our town and the surrounding area.
Which should be nice.
One thing
Yeah.
that
Also,
Bud,
though, make sure that we have a component in that visit of, right, what are we actually substantially going to do? Is the next step the exchange? Is the next step, what
We've
the
talked about
athletic?
that.
Right, and we don't have to talk about it tonight,
Right.
but to make it, a great next step and not just this, consistent,
this
revisiting,
delegation,
if you will.
the delegation is like a one time, their one day doesn't count toward this. Our delegation, then their delegation. I think there should be at some point a delegation of selectmen and town administrator and some committee members, perhaps next spring. But I think there needs to be some sort of visitation like that. But we do have plans to send artists to West Cork and to have an exchange like that. The delegation part will be over within the year, after they come here and we send people again over there. Then it's exchanges, basically, and educating. We have, according to our mission statement, an obligation to educate our people on Irish history and culture, and when the exchanges come here, educate them on American history and culture. So we have a two-pronged thing, and we have several ideas that you will read in the proposal that are too long to go into at this point.
So this includes also, you're right,
Yes.
the next step.
That's
Okay.
where we are now, where we need to go.
Okay.
All right, can I just add, I've already teamed up Joby Norton with a fish expert in Skibbereen, so they're communicating. We had all these candy makers, which I've teamed up with a woman here in Scituate that makes her own candy, so they're communicating. So if they can visit back and forth, maybe they will be invited to the food festival the following year, and then maybe eventually we could have a food festival. So we are getting people of like interest together, and that's just an aside. But it's because they're so enthused. In fact, Pat and I met up with Paul Hayes, who's one of the counselors, Sunday in Hyannisport. They gave him a tour. He was over visiting relatives, so we met up with him and had a great day.
May I just say something? I was thrilled to go, and I thank you for allowing me to pinch hit. Sorry, Jim, that you couldn't go. But I went as a kind of just an observer, but was warmly welcomed by everybody in my capacity. My observations were you have 3 women here that were working very hard. They made it look like they were having fun, but they did not miss a detail or a moment or an opportunity to create this warm friendship thing that really has to happen in order to create these exchanges. The concern that everybody said was we want to do these exchanges, and as you're there, your mind's going, let's get sports, let's do high school, you need to do this. It's a marathon, not a sprint, so we don't want any disappointments, and I think they're well geared for that, is to let's do this incrementally, and let's watch this build. And I think it's just a terrific, they look like us, the town seems like us, it's all water, it's all coastal, it's just beautiful, just like here. And we'll just take your time, and from the advisory committee, we're thrilled to death about it. And I think you guys should take part in that, so that's good. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank
Really.
you. Thank you. Jamie gave a lovely speech at the signing ceremony, and he sang beautifully at one of our dinners.
I did.
Only things that you do overseas, right, Jamie?
Definitely.
What happens in Cork
stays in Cork. Did anybody have any other questions, or?
No, if any group can represent and put this together, it's this group, so I'm so excited to the next step.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for doing all that. And keep us informed, good advance, so we can help coordinate
Yeah.
our best
We will.
foot forward.
And just so you know, we were all disappointed that we couldn't go because of our
We
own
know.
personal schedules. Every one of us wanted to go, but it just didn't happen.
We
So
know.
next time,
So we expressed that.
yes.
Well, now we know there's souffle involved, so.
I ran it by my wife, she said, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I
Thank
think
you.
we could have a lot of tourism back and forth
Definitely.
between the two, as well as exchanges for a purpose.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you all for the report.
The trip, you know, a lot of folks don't know, you guys paid your own way. so
We did pay our own way.
Ambassadors to Scituate.
I just
Thank you.
considered it as an addition on my property taxes.
Oh, thank
My
you.
gift.
Good way to look at it.
Pat, your
Yes.
phone just fell out.
Oh, did it? Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for waiting and being patient.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being so supportive, too.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Bye, Betty.
See you later.
Bye, Jim.
Good night.
Yes.
I will, yeah.
What? Pony?
How much time do you just got?
Pony goes to the gym every morning.
I can tell.
Okay.
If I try to sing, it would be Rhode Island right now.
Next on the agenda.
I can't carry a tune with a bucket.
No.
So I would have been
Is the remote participation policy.
It should be ready to go. We made the changes that the board asked for.
What about
Wait, we missed one.
emergency preparedness?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're not doing that, I apologize. So, item discussing emergency preparedness, that we're removing that. That was, that still needs to be reviewed, so we'll move that.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, I apologize. So, next on the agenda is the remote participation policy. I saw that you did make the changes. I don't know if anybody else has had any comments from any chairs of other committees, but the sense that I get is that the chair, well, a couple of chairs that have reached out to me, is that they don't want the percentage that folks are allowed to be remote to be left on their shoulders. Like, they want us to say, is it 25% of the meetings, or, you know, just maybe a percentage, because they all meet different intervals, instead of just keeping the infrequent as we had. It's the same concern that I brought up before, so it really hasn't changed. And I know we thought that infrequent would be okay, but a couple of them have reached out and said, well, that puts the onus on us to sort of determine, okay, what is the definition of infrequent? And it's hard enough to corral some of these committee members to show up consistently and be there, and, you know, I think they're looking for a little more structure. So I'm just going to bring that up again, and if it's a percentage, that may be easier for the board to consider that again, just to give them a little bit more teeth in the policy to sort of fall back on. That's all I'm hearing.
Yeah, personally, I don't have a problem putting a percent, but I think the chair is the only one that's going to know whether it's productive or not. So if it's ineffective, if it's not, I mean, I hate to say it can only be 25%, but it's fine, you know. But I have no problem putting a number there.
I think,
it's just a
we
trial.
considered saying, you know, whatever is X% or at the chair's discretion.
Well, that
So
still puts the burden on them to be able to, I think what she's saying is,
yes, they
don't want to be the,
Bad guy.
The bad guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
so it's a trial, let's just put a number there. Want to say 50%?
50% is a lot.
50's a lot.
All right, want to say 2%?
Like 20 or
25%.
25%?
or 10% is only one meeting in 10 months. So, yeah, 25% or 20% is maybe 25.
And again, is this a policy, or this is?
It's just a policy, again, so it's also up to them, the discretion of that chair to do it, so. But I see you changed, you know, to put the at least 48 hours in advance, so location with availability of the audio, yeah.
Covered everything.
No operating motor vehicle while participating.
Yeah, I really like that ad.
That was a good ad.
We're watching the Celtics.
Or the, Red Sox.
They're losing 2-1, but nothing.
Playing solitaire.
All right, so do you want to say should be infrequent and then put in parentheses no more than 25%?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want a motion?
So
We
we have a
okay
motion?
doing this without John?
Do we need a motion? We don't need a
already
motion, right?
voted it
We already
for
voted
last
it, right?
meeting with-
This was just an update?
These changes.
Right.
Just
Okay.
an update.
All right, perfect.
Good, good, good.
All right, any other, you guys good with that? Okay. All right. Jim, a discussion and vote on the opioid legislation.
Should be opioid litigation, not opioid legislation.
Oh, yeah, it is litigation.
Several weeks ago, we had the attorney in, Mr. Merrigan, who was representing some cities and towns in this. He gave a presentation to the board about this litigation, what it was, how it works. The board wanted to think about it, so I put it back. In the meantime,
I know, it's litigation, and he said that's a typo. I said the wrong thing.
in the meantime, actually, at our managers meeting, this was one of the things on the agenda. You know, again, very little downside for the board. And one of the questions was, how do you quantify your costs when it comes in? How do you determine what your costs are? If someone gets in an ambulance, you've been paid out of the insurance for that, so is that a cost that you can then recoup again? But, you know, for us, I would say the $125,000 we spend every year on fax through the grant would be a cost that we could recoup. So I don't really see what the risk is to the town. I think as a leader in the opioid fight, it's something the board should consider, and we should, if we're going to do it, we should get going on it sooner rather than later.
I mean, I thought everything he came forth and made sense was, I mean, I don't see a downside to it either.
Can I ask, is it a class action suit for pharmaceuticals?
It's not a class action suit, it's a different type of suit, but it's not a class action.
Is it against pharmaceutical companies?
Yes, against the companies, not against the doctors. Yep.
Any questions?
No.
No, I think it's something that we really should pursue. I think it sends, there's no downside, it sends the right messages, and it promotes accountability. I think we should do it.
Okay. Do we need a vote on it?
Yeah, I think the board should vote to enter into the opioid litigation and authorize the town administrator to sign the.
Should we wait for John on this one?
Is there harm in waiting for the next meeting, which is?
How timely is it?
I don't think there's harm in waiting.
The 29th, okay, to vote on it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any harm in it.
Okay.
Only because he may have looked into it more.
Right.
Okay. That's fine with me. I don't know.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll wait and we'll vote on it on the 29th. That's our next meeting after this one, correct?
Yes.
Okay, but it sounds like most of us are in favor of it. But just in case John has any additional questions. He didn't reach out with any additional questions, did he, Jim? Okay. All right. New business discussion vote, the one-day wine and malt licenses.
Will the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Tailor-Made Bartenders for an event at Scituate Maritime Center on May 26, 2018, from 4 till 8 p.m.?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Tailor-Made Bartenders for an event at Scituate Maritime Center on May 27, 2018, from 4 to 8 p.m.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Silent Chef for an event at Scituate Maritime Center on June 3rd, 2018, from 12 p.m. until 4 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license for Silent Chef for an event at Scituate Maritime Center on June 23rd, 2018, from 1 p.m. until 4 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license to Silent Chef for an event at Scituate Maritime Center on July 22nd, 2018, from 12 p.m. until 4 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And lastly, move the Board of Selectmen approve a one-day wine and malt license for Silent Chef for an event at Scituate Maritime Center on September 28th, 2018, from 5:30 p.m. until 9:30 p.m.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
And the one from Ellen McKenzie has been canceled, so we don't need to do that one. This is the last one. Okay, so the next thing is the Hawker Peddlers renewal for Zack's Ice Cream.
I'm sorry, we also added some Blake one-day licenses to the season on the revised agenda that we sent out.
Oh, yes.
We've done this in the past. This is for sudden events. For example, we're not meeting again until May 29th.
Okay.
If I have a memorial service that needs to be done at the Scituate Maritime Center or the Scituate Harbor Community Building or St. Mary's, where they want a one-day wine and malt, we would have a license available for one that you approved.
It'd be one of the caterers that's on our list, so.
Right,
Yep.
it would be one of the people on the list.
And how many do we do, or do you just?
It says 8.
8?
Yeah, we'll do 8. Instead of limiting it to a particular venue, we felt that the flexibility of whatever venue they need to use would be most appropriate instead of doing 5 at each place.
How did we do, how much, oh, okay, how many did we do last year?
We did about 5 or 6.
Did you use them?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And And then we still had some left over. I said, let's pitch those and put it on the agenda, this agenda.
Okay.
So I'll shred those and,
Right.
Okay.
we still follow all the same rules, making sure they have their insurance and making sure they're on our list and things like that.
And then would you just report those to us the next meeting, whatever was issued, or is that?
Not typically, but if you'd like, we could certainly do that. We send a
Does it-
copy over to the police station so they're aware.
I think it should be read into the record, just like all the others.
If you'd like, we can do that.
Okay.
We haven't done that in the past, but.
Anybody?
I say we name that the Cantfield motion.
Canterfield?
But we don't have to
We're having
approve it or
troubles
anything,
tonight.
it'd just be like correspondence, just read it into the record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we should be consistent with what everybody else has to do.
That sounds good.
So if
Okay.
there's a party we're not invited to, we know about it.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve 8 blanket one-day beer and wine licenses for events at Scituate, town of Scituate locations, following all the normal procedures for licensing.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Ms. Canfield. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Next, thank you. Next is the Hawker Peddlers for Zack's Ice Cream for the 2018 season. He usually comes around town every summer, right?
Yes, this is a renewal.
Yeah, he's not new. He has all of his things in line here.
I'm not doing this one.
Karen?
I would, except I have blank screen.
Go ahead, Sean.
Move the Board of Selectmen approve the Hawker's Peddlers License 2.
Oh.
Ahmad.
Ahmad Alakakatabid. I made that up.
That's,
I said it with confidence.
as Karen said, doing business as Zack's Ice Cream for the 2018 season.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Harris, second by Ms. Canfield. All in favor? Aye.
I couldn't even get Canfield right.
Okay, we're going to move to any board liaison updates. Tony, do you want to start?
Sure. What did I do? I went to an advisory board meeting the other day where they discussed the recreational marijuana item that passed at town meeting, and they were wanting to discuss the financial ramifications of that, and they had an attorney there who's a proponent of the cannabis industry, who went over some clarifications. We had Barbara Quinlan from Fax there, and Laura Manier was there, Nancy Holt was there, and there was somebody else that I'm missing.
Ben Bornstein from planning, I think?
Yep, Ben was there. And there was good discussion. Clearly, the advisory board is in favor of the not banning the recreational, and they're concerned about the financial impact it's going to have on the town. And the only conclusion that we came from the meeting is that nobody has any idea what the financial impact is going to be on the town. So it was good debate, and what they asked us to do, or asked me to do, was bring it back to the board and see if we wanted to create a little subcommittee to kind of look into this more. And I said I'd bring it to the board and let them think about it and see if that was something that we wanted to actually research more and see if there's more to get out of this and keep that debate going. So I'll mention it to John also when I talk to him again, and we can think about it and see if that's something that we want to move down that path. But it was healthy debate, and it was, I think both sides were very well represented, but there was definitely no conclusion. There was no definitive information coming back, so that, and and the other thing that I did last week was they had a dedication for the 3A Farm is now the Susan Phippen, I don't know what they're going to name it, but Community Christmas House in Susan Phippen's honor, and they had a great ceremony there, and a good group of people there, and all the past board members were there, and looked at the facility and kind of chatted about what the plans were for that. So that was another great event.
Nice.
Yeah. That's it.
Just one thing, the Water Resources Committee reported that they are sold out of rain barrels, but they've ordered more. So you can watch on the town website for when they're available again. But that's a great way to help conserve water.
Did they talk about how much water we have in the ground compared to last year or anything like that? Are we ahead, we behind? Did they talk about that at all?
Somebody from DPW usually comes to the monthly meetings and gives the current update. I don't know off the
Just was
top of my
curious,
head
that's
what
all.
the...
The reservoir looks high.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know how it is relative. So the problem with the springtime is that that's when the big release is for the herring. And so that impacts how much water is in the reservoir. I just don't know the numbers in my head right now. But I'll check on that, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, would you get back to me?
I will.
right away? All right.
Is that it?
That's all.
A couple of things, Board of Health is going forward with the town article, the betterment process for the loans for the septic system upgrades. There's at least one resident that's going to take advantage of that. And then on my waterways meeting, I had some folks ask me about reappointments. And I can't recall if I've asked individually you guys about the 6-year rule out of town. So I just float that out there to you guys just to see what your thoughts were. We have some of both on waterways, and if you guys don't recall, that's one of those commissions that seems to generate a lot of interest. And what everyone is in agreement on is getting some commercial fishermen, at least one, on that committee. And there are
Are there some
fishermen.
interested?
Yes, there are.
That's good.
There are. So, something to think about.
That live in town?
Yes, yes, yep.
I haven't received their applications.
Oh, you already have?
You have or have not?
Oh, all right. Well, they
So this is a good
are.
opportunity to sort of remind everybody.
I can name names right now, but I won't, just so embarrass them.
Yeah.
No, but they, and
What do
it's
they
been
do?
a while since, there's been a commercial fisherman involved. And with the things going on with the whole fishing industry, that leads me to another thing. I really dropped the ball. They had a film next door, the high school. I heard about it at the last minute. I think it was entitled Dead in the Water, and I don't know who promoted it, if it was the Division of Marine Fisheries or NOAA or what organization. Just kind of, well, I wasn't there, so I think it gave the temperature of what's going on locally with our fishermen. I know firsthand, as a young adult, seeing all the boats down in Scituate Harbor, and now there are there are very, very few. It used to be a great way to make a living, and it's really, at best, guys are down there doing it part-time. Very few are doing it full-time, and those guys that I know very well that are doing it full-time kind of wish they had another career that they could bounce back on. And some of the guys, it's all they know. So it's really unfortunate, but I dropped the ball. I heard about this documentary, I guess it was right at the last minute, and I don't know if you guys even heard about it.
No, I didn't.
It was in the high school one. I think it just kind of gave you a snapshot of where it's been going. And it's, hopefully, I was talking to Frank Marachi in my office the other day. Hopefully, things will turn around the next, number of years. It's not going to be what it was, I don't believe, but it's got to get
Just through the
better.
lifting of regulations?
There's a
You know.
lot of things going on, and I only know a piece of it, having been involved in that industry over the number of years. I hear them tell me the regulations and everything, and it just, some of it doesn't make sense to me. Crazy, some of it does, but fishermen are environmentalists, they're conservationists. They don't want to wipe out the ocean. They want it preserved for the next generation. And some people may not agree, and some of the people making these decisions for these local fishermen can be people that own large boats, factory ships, and they kind of have a self-interest taking, so that's what I've seen, so. That's all I have to report.
Just a quick comment on Sean's comment about the 6-year thing. In the past, I've spoken out about this, because I really think it's important for us to limit people's terms, particularly in situations where there's a lot of people that want to be involved in it, because what it does is it stymies people wanting to get involved in the town. It's always good to get fresh ideas, fresh blood, and so I think that there's many more boards that many people can be on, that I think you really seriously have to look hard about that. I know there's been times when there haven't been people getting involved in things, and there's actually been boards where continuation of term makes sense on some conservation things or on some zoning things where it's a 3-year lingering project. But I am fully in support of people, of reevaluating everybody's term after 3 years to see what the new mix of people coming in and what skill set they can come to make the committee a stronger committee. So I agree with, I don't know what your opinion was on it, but I think that it should definitely be enforced if there is other capable people that want to get involved on the committees.
I think that's what we always try, well, we have tried to do in the past too, is that there's a lot of interest to, ask those 6 years to step off for a while, and they can always come back on.
Right. They can always still go to public meetings.
And they can always still go, right.
Right.
Yep.
Are we going to look at appointments June?
Right, should we do the public service announcement on it?
Oh.
We have one.
Well, yeah, let's just stay on track for a second. Is that all you had?
That's it.
Because you were talking about, okay. And I didn't go because I was at the Affordable Housing Trust meeting, and those folks, just so people know, are starting to reevaluate the mission and how to be more effective. I think everybody remembers that did a lottery this summer. We were able to place a nice single mom into a home, which was great. And we've got another home that just nobody seems to want to live in. So we're looking at the possibility of selling that to have more money to invest and help folks in other ways. So the committee's working really hard to reevaluate the next step and also to form a better partnership with planning and with Brad's office, because that really never existed. So that announcement of that new grant that Brad secured for everybody is a terrific first step to continue to make better progress in affordable housing. So that's why I wasn't at the Fisherman's thing. We were doing that. That's the only committee update that I have. If there are no more, now we can go to correspondence.
Sorry.
I have 3 things here, so I don't know, Karen, John's not here, since you have it right there, you want to read it? We'll designate you the
I'd love to.
interim clerk.
Well, it is relative.
I didn't ask your permission, sorry, but it's my prerogative.
So, relative to what we were just discussing, the board and committee openings are open. You can go to the website and click on the applications. There are openings on the Beach Commission, Board of Health, Bylaw Review, Coastal Advisory Commission on Disability, Logan Airport Community Advisory Committee, Massport, Rec Department, Veterans Associations, Veteran Services, and Zoning Board of Appeals. There may also be other boards and committees with openings, so just check. And all of the applications, it's not hard to apply, you just fill out the form, are due back on May 18th. So spread the word, because it's a great way to get involved. And if you have any questions about what is on the boards and commissions, then you
Call
can
Sean.
call Sean, or call any of us or Lorraine, because we'd be happy to tell you about that.
A lot of them are outlined in the town bylaws, which is on the website, what the
Right.
responsibilities are for each committee.
And one thing just to call out, that the opening on the Veteran Services Advisory is actually for a veteran. So sometimes we get a lot of folks come forward that aren't veterans, so we just want to make sure we know that's we're looking for a new veteran to come forward, so that's great. Sorry, Karen, go ahead.
That's all right. Is my computer, so is this the conservation letter, is that one? My computer is inoperable.
Correspondence?
I don't think you have to read that. That was in the mailbox, right?
Oh, okay.
You have the correspondence on the computer, too?
Well, that may be.
There is a,
No.
That one, yep.
thing from John, just letting us know about the small business loan program.
Right here, John.
You have that one?
Okay, yep. So John Murphy sent us a good morning. Attached is a small business loan program offered to those businesses that suffered damage from the March 2nd to 4th storm. It was sent out to the Chamber and Harbor merchants, and there will be a page, emergency, it'll also be put on the emergency front page on the town website. So if you're a business and you had damage, you could qualify for a low-interest disaster loan from the U.S. Small Business Administration. What was the last one? Sorry.
There is one in here from Brian Merrick, who is from EPS, just outlining the process that Governor Baker has submitted. Let's see. Federal declaration process for the March 2nd and 4th coastal storms and nor'easters, and Scituate is one of the towns within the counties that does qualify for some of that. So pending approval by the federal government. So that's all been done. That's in there as well. And that's it, I think. All right, and then we just have approval of the meeting minutes.
Other business?
Under other business.
I'd read it. Sorry, my computer has nothing on it right now.
Move to accept the meeting minutes for the Board of Selectmen meeting held on April 24th, 2018.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Vignani, second by Mr. Harris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay. Great. Perfect. All right. We are going to move into executive session, and we will not reconvene in open session. So the board will go into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to litigation regarding the waterways and harbor master, and the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental. Motion by Ms. Canfield.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Yeah, Ms. Curran?
Yes.
Mr. Vignani?
Yes.
Ms. Canfield?
Yes.
Mr. Harris?
Yes.
Great. Thank you, everyone. We won't be returning to open session, so have a great night. Thanks for watching.